Okay, um, we'll start the hangout then. It looks like we're live, and the topic is atheists that don't exist because it's not really possible to actually believe that there's no evidence of a God or a maker. And we have, so far, we have Remy, is a creationist. We have two atheists, Gavagai and Realistic. So, welcome everyone. And if you have any questions, you can go ahead and start. Yes.
I don't know if I have a question. I would have a pronouncement that I'm an atheist and I exist.
Oh, well, you call yourself an atheist anyway. All right.
Right. Well, what do we mean by atheist?
Well, an atheist, according to the definition, is somebody who would declare that there is no God.
I would declare that any of the God concepts that have been proposed, as far as I'm aware or have heard so far, uh, are either not plausible or self-contradictory and problematic. So logically not possible. And there does not seem to be any good evidence for uh, the gods that have been proposed, including the Christian God.
Well, you would agree that you're made to exist, right?
No, I would agree that I exist.
Yeah. So how can you exist without being made to exist? Come on, be real.
I don't know what that. I mean, you're presupposing intention.
Well, it's rather obvious that there's intention there. I mean,
How so?
because of the fact that every part of you is directed before it's made.
I
It's
mean, you could say that about anything.
Is there a distinction between that which was intentional and that which was unintentional?
yes, except that what we consider unintentional is actually also intended when you consider everything.
Yeah, that's what I was asking. That makes that makes the distinction uh, pointless, right? You're just asserting a tautology. If everything is intentional, then nothing is intentional because intentional doesn't mean anything. Intentional
So,
doesn't pick out some distinct referent uh, from something that is unintentional, right? The way words get their meaning is by being contrastive. If you don't have a contrastive definition, so if there's not something that's unintentional, then it doesn't mean anything to say everything is intentional, right?
well, it would just be that everything is intended.
Right, but how would you, if there was something that was not intended, and it existed somewhere, how would you recognize the fact that it was unintentional?
Well, the thing is that we don't readily recognize that mountains and streams and valleys are intentional.
Right, but
We
you just
we
said,
see them as a natural occurrence, but since we know that living organisms are intended, we can also recognize that everything else is intended because of the fact that organisms wouldn't exist without them.
how do you know that?
Well, you need silicon and iron core Earth to for life forms to exist.
So your deity did not have a choice. Those were the only options available to him.
Well, they were options that he made exist,
Okay,
basically.
so it could be some other way.
Oh, we know there's many different ways to do things.
I mean, and angels aren't made of matter, and they're not dependent on an iron core Earth or silicone or carbon, right?
No, they would be in the realm of what's not physical, or
Right, they're the magic stuff.
as far as I know, it's another realm which they can, they can walk on Earth, they can act on Earth, and do things on Earth, but they're more in the realm of the spirit, which is to us is invisible, but just as real, because we know it's real because we're real. We're a real fabrication.
Everything you just said just seems like a non sequitur, right?
Yeah.
How so?
Okay, well, maybe you can produce the argument and draw the inferences, and then I'll see if I can follow it and point out how it's a non sequitur. Because it seemed like you just said that angels exist as immaterial beings, right? That was like premise one, and that was meant to imply that God doesn't require a silicone earth to make beings, right? That's the reason Run brought it up. So angels exist as immaterial beings. That's premise one. That God doesn't need some sort of like silicone base to create life, right? And then you're saying, and then from that you're concluding the third proposition, which is that we know God exists because we were created, but none of that seems to follow from the two premises. So that's my reconstruction of the argument. If that's not the argument, then you should here's the argument, and I'll see if I can follow the chain of inference that you're trying to yield.
Well, we know that the spirit realm does exist because of the fact that we were made to exist and no physical thing is able to make us. So we know the cause of every living organism is not of a physical origin or nature or cause. The physical realm is what was caused by the invisible realm, spiritual realm. So we're the proof of the fact that our supernatural maker exists.
And how do you know this?
Well, because we were made to exist.
Yeah, that's the very thing in question, right? I was asking how you know we are made to exist.
It's observed. We can see that we were made to exist.
What do you mean we can see that we were made to exist?
We can see every stage of development now that science has reached the level where we can understand each and every step almost, except there's still some stuff we don't understand. But from what we do understand is that there's pre-existing written directives that are the direct cause of every living organism that there is, and we know that.
I don't see anything normative about causal tendencies, right? Any scientist, any biologist will tell you that these are just causal tendencies. That's to be distinct from something normative like a written rules. They're not following rules. They're just causal tendencies, right?
Well, there's specific directives for each living organism, and there's no morphing from one to another. There's no observed mechanism where something will change from one thing to another.
I don't understand how that would be relevant to the discussion. How would it be relevant if something were morphing from one thing to another? How could that be relevant to the discussion?
Well, it would have to have been made specifically for what it is.
I guess I'm not following how you're concluding that.
Well, because it's billions of digits of sequenced um chemicals, which
So you're saying it's complex?
no, it's not so much complex, even though it is complex, but it's more about significant sequencing, which is something that no natural thing can do.
Essentially, it's why we regard any other human but our own physical bodies as anything more than a ape. If I were to talk to you as any more than a gorilla, then why would I be talking to you?
I don't
It
understand the
doesn't know.
question.
I'm sure I don't make any sense, but you go to talk to a zoo and talk to a gorilla. Why are you talking to a gorilla that probably has just the same size of brain as you do, or an orangutan, if you really want, or a chimpanzee that has a similar size of brain to you? What makes you different from them? Scientists still can't figure out what it is that makes you a different creature than the apes, besides your thalamus or whatever in the back of your brain that allows your pathways to clarify and give logic to what you your perspective on the world. But that doesn't mean that's what your mind is. It doesn't give you a spirit. It doesn't give you a difference between you and me. So why am I talking to you and not a gorilla at the zoo?
I don't know.
I'm sorry, you just finished drilling him for 10 minutes. I think I'm well, either me or him, are well within our bounds to start drilling you. So
Well,
if you
look,
really got to get down to ask him a question that should be simple enough as to give a philosophical question is, what is it that makes you different from an animal that you may call a pet in your home? You may be allergic. I don't, but regardless, hypothetically, you may have a pet in your home. What makes you different from a dog or a cat?
well, I presume it's because I have intentionality and animals don't.
Yeah, but chemical reactions in bone and matter does not signify anything different between you and a dog, because a dog has brain chemistry as well. And if you really want to argue, we could put a human brain, parts of a human brain, in that of a dog is having a problem with its capabilities, like having a brain problem, and it's not going to make the dog any more intelligent, be able to speak. So, and even if we, in 1,000 years, we're able to make the dog's brain compatible with a human brain, it still won't give the dog any intelligence whatsoever, beyond grabbing a ball, barking when on command, chasing something on command, and stopping on command. It doesn't get any more intelligent than that. You can't teach a dog to take its mouth, grab a pen, and write down help. So, what makes you different from a dog or a gorilla?
Well, I already said, right? I presume it's because I have intentionality and animals don't.
Hmm. And that intentionality comes from
I don't know.
because
Well, animals have
your reasoning, you are
intentionality.
clinically or whatever, you're technically reasoning with the world around you, where you are able to interact with it with thought, with rationality. So, if that's your intentionality to have a purpose behind what you do and say, then a dog can have intentionality as well.
I
Yeah.
don't know why.
The, the higher life forms have intentionality. Every mammal has intentionality.
I mean, I don't. I'd probably disagree with you, but I mean, if you think that, then I don't think there's anything I could do to convince you. I could just maybe appeal to your prior probabilities, but I don't think there's anything I could do to convince you that something has intentionality and another thing doesn't.
I
And
mean, elephants have intentionality. Porpoises, whales.
I think we probably instrumentally attribute intentionality to them, but I don't think they actually have it.
They all have personalities. I mean, that's intentionality.
I think you're just, I think you like confuse what they're saying. I mean, like again, like I said, I don't think I'll be able to convince you if that's really what you believe by just appeal to your prior probabilities of things that constitute intentional beings. I don't think it means anything when an elephant makes noises or something like that. I think they just have, I think they're complex organisms that have um, that just have complex dispositions that that are just reactionary. I don't think like animals have purpose. I don't think they have aboutness relations. I don't think they intend to do things.
Well, let's throw that out because obviously you're right. You are right on that point. You're but nature cannot give intentionality whatsoever. If we are to say that nature derived intentionality by bumping itself in the dark for a million years, if that's a illusion of intentionality because there's only instinct. But instinct doesn't govern sadness. It doesn't. It only governs anger, uh, maybe happiness, attraction, um, very basic emotions. But it does not go through the higher emotions that we have. And if someone wants to say, well, that can be found in the chimpanzees, well, that's not intended like to support what you're saying. That's not intentionality either. So we're just going to go by natural means. Then
I mean, saying intentions are irreducible to causal dispositions is not a position that I disagree with. So I don't really know. I don't really know what the point of argument is.
right. Okay.
Right.
So
It seems like what you want to say is that we don't have an explanation for intentionality, so we should posit God as an explanation.
No, not at all. Not at all. That's not what I'm thinking. Well, what about you, Jordan? Is that what you would conclude?
no, I mean every living organism proves that there's a maker.
Okay, go ahead. No, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
How could I mean, I don't understand how everything could be evidence of something, right? Evidence implies disconfirmation is possible. So, like, would any universe at all be evidence of a maker? Would a universe composed only of 5 cylindrical gold balls or gold cylinders would that be indicative of an intelligent designer or something like that?
Yes, what I was trying to explain before is that we wouldn't readily know that the universe had intention or purpose or anything, or that it was anything other than random or natural, unless, except for the fact that there's living organisms that have the same billions of digits or sequence digits of chemicals in DNA that makes everything specifically what it is.
I'm not understanding how that implies that a creator exists. Can you render the argument that would imply that a creator exists from that?
Well, it would be simply that no natural thing is able to sequence billions of digits of specific directives to make hundreds of protein chains, hundreds of amino acid
I mean,
sequenced in a
like,
way.
if a rock rolls down a hill, for example, it hits another rock and the other rock keeps going, and it just keeps hitting more rocks until they hit the bottom of the hill, right? You just say that's a causal tendency, right? You'd say no one intended that. The rock just fell, hit the other rock, and then hit the other rock, and then it caused like a rock slide, and then they all hit the ground, right? So in that, why would you, that could be some very complex rock slide. There could be calculations that you calculate that, only 1 in a gazillion rock slides would happen just the way that rock slide happened. But how would that imply anything other than rocks just fell, right? I don't understand how that would, how you could infer an intentional being simply from complex reactions, and I don't really buy the premise that it couldn't have occurred from mere causal dispositions, that like life couldn't be sequenced. That's just how DNA, or that's just how DNA, that's just how the molecules that comprise DNA react with one another.
Understood what you're saying. The You just compared a rock slide to biology, so I would think that you need to understand what biology is,
No,
because
no, no. He was talking about the mathematical odds
it has no.
to it having fallen where it did, causing neither damage or correcting nature to a beautiful point or whatever, to productivity. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah,
So
but there's no comparing a rock slide to a living organism, though. There's no comparison. Because the rock slide is all random, completely random, and there's no specific outcome. It's random by
Well, there could be,
definition, basically.
well, there could be many outcomes, right? Like the rock slide, but it's all going to follow some causal rules, right? It's going to follow the laws of motion, and the laws of gravity, things like that, right? So it's going to follow Newton's laws of motion, and it's going to follow the, law of special relativity or something like that. It's going to follow all sorts of rules, right? Supposed rules. I mean, it's not going to be normative. We're just going to say it's just a set of causal dispositions. So when you say, well, why did that rock slide fall that particular way? That's a very particular way. Someone could have intended it to fall that way. You say, yeah, someone could have intended it to fall that way. Sure, that's fine, but there's no evidence that it was intended to fall that way.
Not in a rock slide. There's no evidence, not for us to see.
Well, I'm
But
saying the physical facts are going to underdetermine the mental facts. So there's not going to be any evidence ever of any intentional being, because intentionality is not going to raise the probability of some outcome rather than another, right? So,
well, yeah, sure. If it works as directed, it's intended, and that's exactly what DNA is. It directs working mechanisms, all kinds, trillions of working mechanisms inside of you, essential to your existence, and
I
that's.
think I think the point is, though, if a rock makes no consequence by its the sequence of where and how it falls and what's the cause and everything, if it has no consequence to its uh, destination or its wake, then why would that have any um, higher purpose or behind the function of it falling? And like I just finished saying, like why would a god that governs every molecule to go where it is to uh, inhabit the space of every where that molecule may be, like every molecule in your hand? If God is the purpose behind where your hand moves and how it moves in space and relation, then what if a rock falls 1,000 miles in the middle of nowhere and no animal or human around to know it happened? What consequence? And why would the consequence have any bearing on the universal uh, scenario? What point would there be if it had no consequence? I think that's what you're getting at, right? Or maybe am I wrong?
well, the argument that I was forwarding is that the complex reactions that produce life could just be that, right? They could not be following any specific direction. They could just have a tendency to produce life, right? And that would be, and that to me would be just as consistent with the observations as a being intending for it to be that way. I don't buy this premise that no natural mechanism can produce it. That's what Jungle is trying to say. He's trying to say that no natural mechanism can produce it, but I don't understand what supports that assertion, right? Maybe we don't have an understanding. Maybe we don't know all the biological reactions. I'm pretty sure there's a good catalog of the biological reactions that take place, but I'm not sure if we know everything. Like, obviously, I don't think there's a theory of abiogenesis or anything like that, or there might be a couple theories, but none that are verified independently through observation or anything like that. What I'm saying, okay.
I was going to say, though, like, well, say we had an experiment and it took 500 years for a contained vacuum, like you find in a lab, with one molecule of protein, enzyme, and a bit of acid, and come back 500 years, actually 500 years. We have, there's no way we would bother ever doing this, but say we did, could it arise that the circumstances in the containment would ever arise to create life beyond just sitting there being one enzyme, one protein, and one acid. So we don't know that. So playing around with the idea that nature couldn't arise one way or the other with a god or without a god, it's definitely hypothetical. We can't know.
Hey, Jungle, what's up?
Hey, Brad, how you doing? Glad you could make it.
Noticed your link out there. Is that Realistic Nihilist? I can't see the whole name.
Yeah, I think it is. He
Oh, I
was.
see him debating Mr. Psi 10. Didn't go so well for Mr. Nihilist, but at least he gave it a try. Give him an A for effort.
He was asking a question, or I think was, how do we know that random things have a maker?
But well, I have to agree, though, Nihilist, there is no way that we humans could ever arise to know that a god is behind anything except for faith. So you're right there.
Well, I didn't. That's I'm shocked that you would meet me halfway on that. Honestly,
Well, that's just the honest opinion, because faith believes and doesn't need to prove anything. So
I think that's fine, but I don't think. I mean, I think that's fine if you have a belief that, I guess, it's going to be depend on how you react, act in the world, whether or not that's going to meet the approval of most people. But I think, for the most part, other people are fine with having with others having beliefs, as long as it doesn't, as long as it doesn't affect like public policy and stuff like that are unfounded. But if you're saying that you don't have a reason to believe this or that, then I just don't. I don't think that will be convincing to anyone. If you're attempting to convince people, then I don't think that would be. I don't think that would be helpful.
well, essentially,
May
we're
I
supposed to
ask
let
you guys
the
a question? How you guys kind of went back and forth, and I was hoping to get a turn on this, but are you stating that there's no evidence to be able to prove the existence of God, both of you?
not me. Nope.
Okay, well, I was just curious because it seems to me the fact that there are literally millions of people throughout time who have claimed to have interactions and miracles happen to them, to me, according to science, that would be testable, that would be something that's repeatable and seems to happen every single day of man's existence. Well, it's science, to me at least. Apparently atheists kind of toss up and down what they think evidence might be. Hey, Tommy, welcome.
What do you think evidence is? Do you have a definition for evidence?
Hello, Brett.
Well, I think that the fact that millions of people, again, throughout time have stated that they've either had interactions or they've actually heard the voice of God or they've had things change in their life and all this, that's testable, repeatable, and that, by definition, my friends, is science. So you got your evidence right there. It's up to you to choose if evidence means something to you.
I asked you for a definition of evidence. Right.
Oh, I know. I seen you with Site 10. Every single thing has to have a definition to it, and I would encourage you right away to go to dictionary.com, or you can purchase a dictionary at any bookstore, surprisingly.
Well, I can offer you the definition of evidence that I use, right? But I was curious the definition that you're using.
Well, I just gave you a definition of what is referred to as evidence, repeatable, testable. The fact that, again, third time, millions of people throughout time have had experiences, and it's been over and over and over again. What more do you need?
I'm asking how that meets the criteria for what you call evidence, right? What's the criteria for something you call evidence?
You see what I mean? The guy doesn't like evidence. If we were to do a court case right now and making the case of God, literally millions of God believers would be standing in line around the corner, and the atheist would have what? Oh yeah, that's right. As Lawrence Cross so eloquently puts it, nothing.
They'd be screaming for people to define the word evidence.
Well, the only people that would actually be submittable for evidence is not the people who have been changed by it, but the doctors who have actually concluded in their analysis saying this cancer cannot be removed. This cancer will kill you, and there is no reversible process. And they actually take a biopsy and show that it is decaying the flesh, and it is decreping the biology of the person and is destabilizing their body. And the blood cells, if it's a blood problem, blood cancer, that the blood is actually decaying and dying on you, and they actually show you the evidence. And then 2 months later, the same person comes in and says, I was touched immediately after I asked for the Lord to fix me and clean this up, and comes into the office and tells the doctor this, and the doctor takes another biopsy saying, finding this is not the same person. This person doesn't have any cancer. Well, that would be more like you would need the doctor to come in with the test results rather than the person saying I'm cancer free. So, again, Brett is right. If there is probably a lineup, you could probably find a lineup of doctors. What do you call it? The oncologists. They have to do with cancer. There probably is a lineup of oncologists you could find that actually would say, yeah, I was practically signing this person's death certificate, and they came in my office, and I find nothing. And the atheist is just going to say, well, it's remission. No, this doctor would say it's not possible. Many doctors would say that some of these cases are not remissible at all. Now, some of these cases have never been able to. Some cases you could prove that they're not remissible, that they couldn't just the cancer just fixed itself and died off and was flushed out of the system. Some of these cases couldn't have that happen, but what am I? Who am I to say? So go ahead.
Remy, I wanted to interrupt you a while back, but I didn't. I tried a couple of times, but.
No, I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead.
Well, the point was that I don't see what's problematic with me demanding a definition, right? If you're going to make an argument, you have to define your terms, and so the only thing that I was asking Brett for was a definition, right, of what he thought evidence was, and I told him I could provide one if he wanted to do that, but I don't see anything, right? What he did is he didn't render an argument, he just made an appeal to motivations.
Motivation? Okay.
Yeah,
well, let's take a look at the dictionary. I understand that atheists have issue with that, and I'm fine, but here's the dictionary nonetheless. That which tends to prove or disprove something, ground for belief, proof. Something that makes plain or clear an indication or sign. Law, data presented to a court or jury, and proof of the facts and issue, and which may include the testimony of witnesses, records, or objects. Well, Christianity's got a whole lot of witnesses and testimony on that. Heck, we've even got a book based upon it. Now, let's take a look here. To make evident or clear, show clearly, manifest, to support by evidence. Yeah, we get it.
Yeah, there's not only evidence that is personal experience or maybe medical evidence of something, of a miracle that happened, but there's also the evidence of just creation itself and the fact that there's living organisms. If we lived in a universe where there's no animals, no people, or no nothing, and you look at the universe and you see everything has a natural cause, and it would still have to have an initial cause because it's all energy, and the energy is being depleted as time goes by. But even without considering that, I mean, if you don't consider that, you might think that there was no direct cause, or that everything was natural, because the fact that everything that you see is happening natural. But then there is always that cause that caused the matter. Now that we understand science, we know that matter is energy, and energy is being depleted, and matter is disappearing. That right there is proof that there's a cause and a maker of everything, even without any living organisms. But the fact that we have living organisms, which each one has billions of digits of directives that work, we already know that there's no natural cause to make anything that works as directed. That just doesn't happen. And the fact that it happens billions of times in every different living organism is more proof than you would ever need. So that you are the body of proof of your maker, of the fact that you were made. You are the fabrication. Your maker is the reality.
There's one other thing too. The issue that we're going to have, Mr. Nihilist, is one. I seen you on the Side 10 debate, and he gave you information and all that, and you even swore in front of a live audience that you were going to actually change your name from Nihilist to, I believe, Evidentialist or something like that. You couldn't even figure out what position you are. You even told the live audience that you don't even think reality has meaning, so no matter how much evidence we give you, if you can't even accept reality, you're not going to accept the evidence. It just is what it is. Be right back, guys.
Yeah, Brett Keane, that's not an argument against my position, so if you'd like to render an argument...
You don't have a position. You're not
Yeah.
even, you don't even know if you're a nihilist one day to an evidentialist to the next. You
Tell
don't.
me,
What
tell
the-
me what... Hey, shut the fuck up for a second, because...
What's wrong? Don't have a rage quit, will you? No meltdowns.
Yeah, watch your language. Don't try to keep it clean.
Yeah, chill out, relax, gang. Be right back.
Telling me what I am is not a fucking argument, Brett Keane, so when you want to make an argument, you can do that, and I'll be happy to knock your dick in the dirt, right? I'll shove it down your fucking
Hey,
throat.
that's not an argument.
This
That's
guy
not an argument.
is so intelligent, isn't he? Don't you just smell the
Yeah,
rationale?
that's not an argument.
No, I'm not
Right
making
back.
an argument. I'm
That's not an
insulting.
argument. Try to make an argument without cursing, please.
Well, I can make plenty of arguments without cursing, right? But until Brett Keane makes a fucking argument, then he can fuck off with his bullshit ad homs.
Take it easy, okay? Try to address the issue.
You think he's addressing the issue when he brings up what my name is? Do you think that's actually addressing the issue? Do you think my name has any bearing on any arguments I might render?
Well, your name is your position that you're taking. And basically, an atheist doesn't...
Has any bearing on the arguments that I render, right? If I render an argument to show that belief in God or that there's no evidence or that there can't be evidence for the belief in God that you guys are proposing, do you think my position is in any way relevant to that, right?
Okay, what is your position then?
Well, with regards to the God that you guys are talking about, it sounds like you're trying to draw a design inference, right? And my position there is that there can't be evidence for God. Because, I mean, that's my position essentially, is that there can't be evidence for the God that you're suggesting.
Why not? I mean, so there's nothing that you could imagine that would suffice for evidence, for design?
No, there's
Well, okay, well, let me turn it around on you. So would you say that there's evidence for the opposite, that mindlessness or chance or purposeless or randomness? Is there evidence for that?
No, I don't see how that could be.
Okay, well, at least you're consistent. I mean, I don't know, like if you see a building, you know, our minds, most of us anyway, would be able to reason that, yeah, somebody, you know, some intelligence or some, you know, design was behind that. So if there's complexity in nature, you would think that, you know, the same principle would apply, that at least logically you could say, yeah, this has design behind it. And I don't think like even evolutionists or scientists would disagree that there's design. It's just that they are suggesting that this design was not, it was more mechanical in nature. The design was made by a mindless mechanical process as opposed to an intelligent mind. It's not that there wasn't design, but They just said it was.
I just don't think I don't think there can be evidence, because what I take evidence to be is an observation that increases the probability of some hypothesis, right? And so,
Okay. Well, I think you'd be right if you were saying there's no proof, but if you're going to say there's no evidence, I think that's incorrect. Now, I would agree with you if you're using the word proof.
well, I said, right, I just gave my definition of evidence. By evidence, I mean an observation that raises the probability of the phenomenon suggested by some hypothesis, right?
Well, that to me, okay, so I don't see what would be wrong with looking at something in, like, say, a building and saying, yeah, that looks designed, which raises the probability that there was a designer. Same with complex things in nature, I would think.
Well, the problem is that you don't get predictions from intentionality, right? Intentionality itself doesn't make predictions because, for instance, you have a complex universe. Well, God could have made a universe that was not complex, right? He could have made a universe that only had 5 green cubes in it, right? He could have made a universe that was coarsely designed. He could have made a fine-tuned universe. He could have made any type of universe. So the fact that he has intentionality, or the fact that the universe is complex, doesn't raise the expectation that we would see this particular type of universe, right? It's consistent. Intentionality is going to be consistent with all observations.
Well, but we have one universe, and it does appear to many to at least look designed.
Right, and what I'm saying is that intentionality doesn't generate that prediction because it's consistent with the universe not being designed. Right? God could have not designed a universe, right? You agree?
Okay, okay, fine, but I mean, an engineer could just throw some paper up in the air and watch it fall to the ground in a random fashion too. But that doesn't take away from the fact that a building's designed. Just because an engineer, or somebody else could design something that's not, or could throw something together that's not complex. I'm not really following your argument, but.
Well, we appeal to specific intentions when we make hypotheses about human agents, right? We appeal to specific intentions that they had, and then throughout the course of history, we have observations that are consistent with just the physical facts that are going to be underdetermined by the intentional facts, right? The mental facts. So we're going to know what a human looks like. We're going to know what one looks like building a building, right? And so we'll have observations. We should be able to go and speak to these people. It's going to make various predictions, but none of those are going to be rote predictions made by simply positing an agent, right? If you posit an agent, that's not going to make any predictions. It's not going to predict a building is there. It's not going to predict a building is not there, because because a building existing or not existing is going to be consistent.
I'm not really predicting an agent necessarily. I mean, we believe there's an agent. Christians believe that there is a God of the Bible in our case, but we're just, when we look at nature, people who believe in God, and maybe others can just, there's something inherent about nature, innate about, a falcon diving or or a dolphin, the way it kind of elegantly swims in the ocean. I mean, it just appears to be designed. And so we're not saying that God per se that this is evidence of God. It's just evidence of design.
If you don't mind, real quick, I'd like to share something since we're still on dictionary there. Nihilism is the belief that all values are baseless and that nothing can be known. Nothing can be known or communicated. It is often associated with extreme pessimism and a radical skepticism that condemns existence, reality itself. A true nihilist would believe in nothing, have no loyalties, and no purpose other than perhaps an impulse to destroy. That's the definition of a nihilist, which is what our friend is here.
So he has no position or nothing to tell us.
There are different
His
types.
position is less valid than a turd being flushed, basically.
There are various types of nihilism, Brett Keane. So you can fuck off once again. right? Because the various definitions that you can be a metaphysical nihilist, you can be a mereological nihilist, you can be a moral nihilist, you can be a political nihilist. There are many different types of nihilists, right? So you trying to lump it all together into one sum is just disingenuous because you're a prick, right?
Oh, okay. Boy,
Okay,
we've
what
got a
kind of
very angry nihilist here, apparently.
what kind of nihilist are you then? A realistic? What kind of nihilist is that?
Well, I mean, I'm a type of metaphysical nihilist, right? But I think abstract objects exist, so there's a qualified version of metaphysical nihilism. I'm a mereological nihilist. That means I don't think there are proper part-whole relations. I don't believe in substance theory, for example. So that would be a reason not to be a mereological realist.
But you believe and recognize the table of elements, right?
I mean, yeah, I guess, yeah.
So
Like
you don't deny the physical world, in other words.
no.
It depends on what day of the week you get him. According to his debate with Saitin, he doesn't accept reality.
You have a fucking argument, right? Because I don't understand why these people won't kick you out of the call unless you render a fucking argument, right? Because it doesn't seem like you're doing anything but being a cocksucker right now.
The issue is that you say one thing and then you do another. If they go over to Saitin and Mr. Bible Thumping Wingnuts channel right now, they can see that you don't know where you're at from one day to the next. That's the problem.
Yeah, I don't see an argument being made against what I'm suggesting, right? I'm arguing, at least Tommy Hall is arguing the point, right? You're not arguing any fucking point. You're just being a cocksucker.
Okay, so where are you? Okay, so you say you acknowledge then that there's no you're saying there's no evidence for God, and I ask you about chance. Is there evidence for chance? And you said no. So where does that leave you? I mean, what's your position on things?
Well, I just don't think that there's a specific explanation for the rise of life. I mean, there could be a mechanistic explanation, but I don't think you're ever going to have an ultimate explanation, because I think that it bottoms out in brute contingency. And that's because I have various motivations for thinking that brute contingency is what grounds reality. So ultimately, I don't think there's any explanation for why this universe obtained as opposed to the infinite number of other universes, for example. But I think I think you could propose a mechanistic explanation because of the nature of the universe, and that we, presuppose the uniformity of nature and things like that. I think a mechanistic explanation could account for the rise in life forms.
Well, that kind of begs the question on where did the matter come from, and where did existence come from? I mean, there's a lot we don't know about the existence itself and the nature of reality. Probably we know next to nothing. So, I mean, how could that not leave room for the supernatural?
Hey, Neil. What's up?
Hello, Neil.
What's up, guys? And consciousness, by the way, I'll add.
Yeah, no, that's an issue too.
I want to know where the significant sequencing came from in biology.
Well,
Guys, I'll be right back. I'm going to give Mr. Nihilist a chance to relax and calm down so he doesn't get just totally out of hand. Be right back.
I hope you fucking die when you leave, asshole.
Well, where biology came from, for that matter.
Wow.
Much less DNA, but all of biology.
What's
Yeah,
that?
that's what I'm saying. Biology is DNA, it's significant sequencing, proteins, mechanism, pumps, motors, electric motors, spinning shafts, manufacturing facilities, all kind of stuff. No, that's not a natural cause.
Why are you guys entertaining this guy when he said something like that? I don't understand.
Neil, well, I mean, we've had a conversation before, and I can be respectful. In fact, I don't think I've said a bad thing to Jungle. I don't think I've said a bad thing to you. I've never said a bad thing to Remy, and I've never said a bad thing to Tommy, right? It's Brett Keane that I have a problem with. Brett Keane is a two-faced lying piece of shit.
All right,
Right.
well, I guess when you treat other people like that, I'm afraid that I'm going to be on the receiving of that end of that one day. You understand what I'm saying?
It depends on how you argue, right? It depends on what you're trying to do, because all Brett Keane is trying to do is undermine things I say based on positions that I may have held in the past, may have not held, right? Maybe I didn't have a different definition or the way of defining myself, which is completely irrelevant to any of the arguments I'm making right now, right? Because if I make an argument that there can't be evidence for a specific designer, right, that argument needs to be met on its own merits. It can't say, well, you can't account for truth or you can't account for this, so blah, 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 blah. So it doesn't matter coming from you or things like that, right? Because presumably all of you accept that that truth is possible and all those sorts of things. So if I show that there is an issue according to what you guys believe, then of course, right, you're going to have to address those specific arguments, right? It doesn't have, and Brett Keen's not putting anything on the table, right? He's not offering any arguments against my position. He just keeps attacking me. So they're personal attacks, so I'm going to go back and personally attack him as well.
No. You want to be the bigger person. If you got a better argument, don't resort to schoolyard tactics.
Well, I mean, I don't have a problem humiliating him, Remy.
No, that's still schoolyard tactics.
Yeah, but we're trying to find out.
If you're over the age of 20, then act like those who are 50. And if the people you know who are 50 years old are acting like that, then you need to change your friends. Because that's no way to treat another human being. Even if if someone treats you like that's inhumane, and you want to treat them with the respect you want, even though they're not going to treat you with respect.
Remy, if I start using fallacious arguments and being a cocksucker, I expect people to reprimand me. So I'm not being inconsistent, right? I would expect people to reprimand me if I was being a crazy ass sophist.
Elegant words you use, cocksucker. I mean, come on, man.
Yeah, we wanna know what proves a point or what the truth is. We don't need to know anything about anybody's personal habits or anything like that. We're not interested in that.
Right, that's fine. And if you don't want to go on tangents like that, I recommend you kick Brett Keen off this podcast, right? Because that whole tangent started because of what he came up with, right? I asked him to provide a definition for evidence, and then he said that was problematic, and then he went to the dictionary, and then he started mentioning things about my position. My position wasn't brought up, right? He brought up nihilism. He posted it in the chat and said, blah, 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 this is what you believe, and he predicated me with a straw man, upon which I clarified, right? I said what type of nihilist I am. And this whole conversation, right, I was having a conversation with Tommy about the design inference, which, I mean, I was happy to discuss, right, and I wasn't being rude with him or anything like that. And then Brett Keen came in and he just kept dissuading the entire podcast. So if you want to actually be conducive towards conversation, I would recommend removing him from the chat, because I can speak politely with you guys all night long, right? But if he comes in here and tries to use dishonest tactics again, I'm going to shove it in his face just like I have been.
So
I think you're a little upset, man. Just calm down.
So did you and Tommy, I'll ask both of you, Tommy and him, did you guys get your topic resolved, or is there anything left going there?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess the way I left it was that, sure enough, I believe the belief in God is just that, it's faith-based, but design, if we're gonna say that, we see design in nature, that's not, I don't know. He was trying to say that that's not evidence for design.
Yeah, so Tommy, essentially you're not. I don't know your mind, but it sounds to me you're appealing to the fine-tuning argument.
Yeah, more or less.
That is actually even accepted with one of the all-time atheists of them all, Stephen Hawking. So, and even he acknowledged that it's not a literal control room, but that is mathematically how physics and the laws of physics are so finitely detailed to have human life in it to the trillionth of a trillionth of a trillionth power.
Right, but realistic doesn't count that as he doesn't count that as evidence for design.
But it's still Stephen Hawking can't ignore that the odds are beyond astronomical. So if that's what, I
Right.
don't know if that's what you were trying to. It's what that, I don't know if that helps. So,
Well, I think
but again, yeah, again, that's not actually screaming out. That's what God. That's because of God. That just means that there's something that nature can't account for, because mathematics in physics can't really account for. Well, here we are, because here we are also has to account for why there's thousands of symbiotic creatures that cannot live without one another and could not live without one another within any phase of history. And so if the physics fine tuning argument accounts for them too without a god, then I would still say that we have reason to count humans as intrinsically uh, valuable to the earth, no matter how you look at it. So go ahead.
I've been contemplating leaving the Google Plus community lately, and now I understand why.
No, don't do that. That's what they want you to do.
I know. But it's just, man, I can't come into a room with a bunch of my friends. All of you guys here are my friends, and I mean, come on, man, it's ridiculous.
I'm trying to help it, man. I'm trying to help both everybody. So
yeah,
Hey, Jungle, can you do me a favor? Can you provide me a link to the outside of this thing?
How's that again? Outside of this thing?
Yeah, you just click on the link thing down there and put it over there.
Which link?
to your the YouTube, not you. You talk about the YouTube or the
Yeah,
Hangout?
the outside of the broadcast.
So essentially, the Hangout,
Is it?
The Hangout event link.
not this Hangout screen, but that what comes before it, where you invite people. So,
Not this one?
no, that would be to this room. He's talking about
Okay.
the outside Hangout, where you invite everybody. So
Okay.
in your profile, Jungle Jargon's profile, you would see the two little people in the top right, and then there's a little exclamation mark looking thing like an upside down drop of water. You have to see what he's looking for is the where the chat or that upside down drop of water is. So if you can link them to like your profile page or something. So
Hey,
he's
Brad, I'd like to talk to you if you ever get time. Just make a hangout, or I'll make one, or something like that. But I'm out of here, guys. I love you.
All right, see you later, Neil. Always a pleasure.
See you, Neil.
so just give
So
him
is my
second
profile
turn.
page, is that good enough?
Should be.
I'll find it. I hope you don't mind there, Mr. Realistic Nihilist, but I'm going to grab the clip of you telling me you want me to die, and then I'm going to also show people that you're lying by putting the Side 10 clip up on my channel. Hope you don't have an issue with
what
that.
I'm lying about, Brett.
Well, the clip actually has you in it talking. I'm just wanting people to realize what they're dealing with.
Yeah, because the whole reason for that is because I didn't want to get distracted by a pointless tittle that was completely irrelevant, because what my name is has nothing to do with any arguments I've rendered, right?
Well, I don't think that you're actually looking for evidence of God whatsoever. I think you're in here just to aggravate people and cause trouble. I've seen what you're about.
So you should be able to find the outside video on his profile.
I appreciate it. I'll get to it. Thank you.
So I would like to help. I will say that I hope most Christians realize that we do not come to believing in God simply because of something happening in nature that is unexplainable. We come to the real diehard Christian, hardcore Christian should be a Christian because of something personal that has happened either in their own life or to someone they witnessed happen with it. So it's not about seeing a bird or anything like that in nature. It's like, oh my gosh, God,
Right.
and, when they didn't already know God, that seeing something in nature, being out in the on Mount Everest, saying this is majestic. Oh my gosh, this is godly. That's not what brings you. If you had no concept of a God before that point, it's not going to bring you to a realization of a God of any sort, let alone Jesus. And the Bible is only meant to attract people, but it's not meant to give people salvation. But unless they read it themselves, people reading the Bible on their own is between them and God privately. And so, if you nihilists have read the Bible and you still haven't had a connection, then that's not for us to tell you how to do it, because that's the job of the Holy Spirit. I'm sorry, it is. It's the job of the Holy Spirit. So if you're looking to, well, why is the cosmos conform in this particular configuration that we find today, be it the Big Bang or whatever? If that's what you're looking for, is why that happens, and it must be explained by God, we can't help you, because we would have to know God, we have to see God before we even started doing it, if you want to be really right to the point honest about God. So
Yeah, that's again. I don't really. I don't have a problem with that type of position, right? Because I don't see how I could argue against it, right? If you don't believe in God on the basis of reasons, if you take it like to be a basic belief, then I mean, I guess I could argue. I could render arguments against the concept that you specifically pick out, but I couldn't. Like, I don't. I mean, I don't have an argument against someone just believing on faith, right? I don't think the only thing I can say is that I don't think it would be convincing to anybody. If you're trying to convince somebody, I don't think that would work. I mean, I think you'd need an argument. So something like the intelligent design hypothesis, that might be an argument, right?
Yeah. But one of my old favorite evidences, but I'm sure I can think like the TV series Criminal Minds. They have to think like a criminal to catch them. So I can think somewhat like a skeptic to get to the point to understand why these evidences are dismissed. And so one of my favorite evidences that have been over the years is that they have found the remains of the likely remains of the city Sodom, I think it was, and it actually has been shown that it used to be a city of sorts. It had a wall, and it has been at some point thousands of years ago completely baked in sulfur. And the sulfur used was beyond the burning point of regular sulfur. And people are, and say, some skeptics will say, well, that, a volcano. Well, they haven't found any evidence of any sort of volcano within 100, whatever. No, there's no feasible volcano in the area. So then they jump to the idea that somewhere, in Russia, there was at one point a meteor that hit, and somehow the cast off from that meteor was somehow miraculously, because it is miraculously against the odds, only to hit and only to affect it using its sulfur, this little town, this little city. So, but I'm sure there's a way to skepticize that. So I'm okay with that, because that's natural evidence. So there's probably a natural explanation for why this ancient ruin has been completely burned in sulfur. I just don't know it. And so, but that's a natural reason to believe in God, because, and then if I were to refer to the Bible saying, see, well, it might not necessarily mean that still might necessarily mean it's God. That could just mean someone at the time thought, oh my gosh, what the hell, I just came to the city a few days later, and someone else watching it witnessed the nighttime at 12 o'clock at night being lit up like fire, and the city being burned to ash, and that's God. That's you could come to that conclusion too. So skeptically, I could see that, but until I actually hear of a rational, natural reason, because obviously there's no volcano, I'm going to use that as evidence for God in a natural world. So go ahead. Sorry.
So it basically just depends on which goggles you're seeing the world through, because like you say, they could even make a post hoc explanation of that. They could say, well, they could make the story up after say a meteor hit.
Yeah, that's what I was just pointing out. Yeah.
Yeah. So just depends on how you're looking at it. But yeah, I think you're right though. I don't think I used to think the opposite. I used to think that I could convince people, or that they could be convinced by certain evidence in biology, or evidence out in nature. But I'm not at all convinced now that people can be led to the Lord just simply by science, or what scientists uncover. I mean, it's got to be a personal thing between you and the Lord. That's a supernatural, coming together, and so that's the only thing that's going to do it. And it took me a long time to come to grips with that.
I'm sorry there, nihilist. I went off on a tangent. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's a difference between convincing someone and having evidence to show that something happened. I put in the side, I put in the verse that says that God made it evident to everyone through creation.
I think so. I think for that specific instance, right? I mean, I see that you wrote that verse, but I think you'd have to have an argument that the Bible is true, right? Or you'd have to have an argument that should be interpreted literally.
Well, it appealed to creation. It didn't appeal to itself.
Well, right, but you'd have to have an argument to show that that's true, right? To show that everyone believes in God. Like, you'd have to have an argument that makes it the case that we should believe that post, because I could write anything, right? I could say, the natural earth has revealed to us, right? I could write in any random text, the natural earth has revealed to us that there is in fact a creator.
Yeah,
and exists, but
the creation is the only evidence you're going to see besides the Holy Spirit. And if you reject the Holy Spirit and you reject the evidence of creation, then you're not going to be able to see or understand anything.
I'm not really following it. Like I said, you're going to have to forward an argument to the effect that those verses should be, for one, they should be interpreted literally.
No, forget the verse. The verse appealed to creation. It already said, because of creation, you're without excuse.
Right. Well, I could just, I just deny that the creation is evidence of God.
You're denying basically creation exists.
No, I don't have to. I mean, like I agree with you that the universe exists, right? I don't have to deny that the universe exists. I just deny that it was created by anybody.
But that's what I'm saying. Follow the follow the elements. Follow the evidence. The elements exist. They're sequenced. The molecules are sequenced to make a bigger molecules full of information that is actually a machine that works. And there's other machines that transcribe the information and everything. That's evidence that you were made to exist. That's not evidence of a random cause.
Well, I mean, depending on what you mean, I mean, I think that it's not going to be evidence, right? This is what I've been arguing the whole time, is that there's not going to be evidence of a creator, because the mere fact of a creator doesn't generate predictions. That it doesn't generate a prediction that we would.
But you only have two choices. Either there was objects that made you, because you are made to exist. Either it's objects that made you, or the maker of objects made the objects and sequenced the objects to make you. That's the only two choices you have.
Well, I mean, I don't see that, like, me not having an adequate explanation for my being doesn't strike me as evidence of God, right? I just say.
But it still is a maker, whether it's a natural maker, whether it's a rock or whatever it is, it's still a maker.
Well, if you mean something that's non-intentional, if that can be a maker, then yeah, I don't have to dispute you, right? I would agree that I exist.
Yeah, but non-intentional things don't make intentional things. Things that aren't a mind can't make a mind. I mean.
Well, I mean, I don't even see how minded things can make a mind. Like, you presumably you have a mind, right?
Right, exactly. Mindless things certainly can't make a mind.
I don't see how you can. I mean, can you make a mind, right?
Well, then you're just proving my point. You're proving my point. If I have a mind and I can't make a mind, how much more is a mindless thing not going to be able to make a mind?
Well, I'm just saying that you said minds can create minded things, right? I mean, I
I
don't.
said, I said mindless things can't make a mind. That's what I said.
Okay, so you're correct. You did in fact say that, right? But what I assume that you're presupposing is that minded things can make minds, right?
No, I never said that. I'm not saying that.
Not presupposing that.
I'm not saying that things with a mind in this world can make anything, with similar to a mind.
Yeah, he
I
said they
mean,
can't. He said they can't.
yeah, I'm not.
Right.
I mean, it's a possibility with information that you could make one grow, but you're copying the information. You're not. It's an open book test. You're reading from the open book.
Well, I don't really.
I want to go back to what you said a second ago, that, and maybe you can rephrase it if I'm not saying it right, but you said something along the lines of God, you cannot, that cannot had predictions made to verify that. How did you say that?
Well, I said a designer doesn't generate predictions. Is what I said. So.
Okay, right. So my only comment on that would be, like, say there was a God who created everything, wouldn't a prediction be that pretty much everything would be shrouded in mystery as far as origins goes? So in other words, you could disprove that prediction by showing proof of origins, naturalistic origins. So a prediction of God, or supernatural creation, would be that everything would be shrouded in mystery when it comes to
I'm not following.
origins.
I'm not following. Can you explain why it would make that prediction?
Well, as opposed to naturalistic explanation, if things arrive naturally, then theoretically science could uncover that by the scientific method, by investigating natural causes. So, but if God did it, then it would be impossible to find the cause of anything by way of natural causes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but what you're trying to say is that a lack of explanation is evidence of God, right? But evidence is by definition an explanation, right? So you're saying that if we don't have an explanation, then we infer God, but that's not.
No, I'm making it the other way. I'm saying that would be a prediction of God, that you could not find a legitimate alternative. And that's exactly where we are. It is shrouded in mystery.
Well, if
pretty much everything.
You're saying a prediction made by a theory, right, is that there's no evidence for that theory, right? Then I would just say that that's not
I mean, it is quasi God of the gaps, but then you're turning around and doing nature of the gaps. You're saying, okay, well, you're kind of doing the same thing. You're turning around. You're believing in nature of the gaps.
Well, I want to make this clear that when I say that I don't have an explanation for some proposed phenomenon, I merely mean that I don't have an explanation for some phenomenon, right?
Yeah, but then you're assuming that nature did it, though.
I'm not assuming that nature did it, right? I'm not assuming anything. I'm just saying that there's no explanation, right? If someone proposed a potential explanation, I would scrutinize to see whether it was in fact a potential explanation, right? Whether or not it generated predictions and so on and so forth. But
well, you said a few minutes ago that you could buy into the mechanistic, or I forgot how you put it, but the I guess the mechanistic explanation of everything, or naturalistic. I mean, maybe I'm forgetting how you said it, but it sounded like you were kind of buying into the idea that it was sort of natural or mechanistic.
I think you said mechanism. Hello, Philip. How you doing?
But by rejecting God, you are, in essence, by default, accepting, because there's only two options: there's God or there's not God. There's God or there's nature, or naturalism. So by saying that there's no God, you are accepting naturalism.
Why are there only? I'm not a naturalist, though, right? So I don't know. I don't see why I would have to accept naturalism.
I'm saying that you're assuming that nature did it, that God did not do it, that nature without God did it.
Well, I'm saying that there's no evidence for God.
Okay, well, but you're accepting then you're essentially saying that you believe nature did it because there's no evidence for God.
I don't know how I can. I don't know how I can make this thing clear, right? I'm not committed to anything.
Okay.
There's a. Do you have a third alternative? Is it the natural existence of all things, or is it a supernatural?
Well,
I don't even know what supernatural is supposed to mean, right?
Well, let's take a look at the dictionary here real quick. It says a manifestation or event attributed to some force beyond scientific understanding or the laws of nature. Well, according to this definition, the entire universe is supernatural.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's exactly my point.
So, if all that supernatural means is that it's not possible for there to be a scientific explanation for some proposed phenomenon, then that's fine. I mean, I don't. That right? That's
Well,
fine.
it's not just a scientific understanding or if there's an explanation. It's also attributed to the understanding of the laws of nature. According to the model of the universe that we exist in right now, the laws of nature did not exist until the expansion of the Big Bang. Therefore, the laws of nature were not even there. That in itself is supernatural. The universe is a miracle.
Right, but I don't see how anything wouldn't be a miracle on that.
Well, that's right. Exactly my point. The universe is supernatural. Therefore, you're supernatural as well.
I'm not really following that inference.
Well, just like being alive is supernatural, I believe. I believe consciousness is supernatural. I believe it's all, even atoms, so-called matter. I think all that is actually supernatural. And just like what you're saying, Brett, it was a supernatural beginning, and therefore it only follows that we're experiencing a supernatural existence. And even physicists acknowledge there's a lot of weird stuff about physics that don't really follow the rules of what they would consider natural.
Yeah. And your point earlier that you made, Tommy, it was eloquent and it was perfect. If the universe is created by God, people are not going to get the explanation and answer unless the supernatural deity who created it allows us that access. But if a naturalistic explanation were there, well, we're just asking and waiting on scientists. They've had thousands of years, but they seem to be in a shroud of mystery.
Yeah.
Well, there are all sorts of unconfirmed or theories that are hard to find evidence for, but I mean, there'd be reasons to believe in them, right? That for example, that new I forgot what they called it, but they made it in the particle accelerator that was hypothesized to be there and then made predictions, right? And that was very hard to find. We didn't find that for thousands of years. I mean, it wouldn't matter how long it takes, right? If there is a natural explanation, then there's a natural explanation, right?
I'm glad to hear that you do have a great amount of faith in science. Yes.
Okay.
But none of that is significantly sequenced, though.
I don't really. This whole significantly sequenced thing is bizarre to me. I don't know why you keep bringing it up. Because like I was saying, right? If we posit a designer, right? All observations are going to be consistent with that designer because a designer itself doesn't make any predictions, right? It doesn't make a prediction that we would see a universe. It doesn't make a prediction that there would even exist a universe, right? It doesn't make a prediction that we wouldn't have a universe that only has 6 cows in it, right? It doesn't make any predictions whatsoever, right? So a designer is consistent with any possible observation. So I don't see.
What predictions does chance create or predict? What type of predictions would chance give us?
I don't know. I don't know if chance makes.
Okay, so it seems to me you're kind of in a no man's land of anything, because chance doesn't give us any predictions, and God doesn't give us any predictions, and therefore you can't believe in either one of them.
Well, look, if I don't know the explanation of the universe, then I'm just going to say I don't know the explanation.
Okay, well, yeah, that's fine. You can say you don't know, but ultimately it's going to come down one or the other. It's either chance or God, unless someone has another explanation.
Okay, fine.
So
it's either a visible thing that made you, or it's an invisible thing that made you.
Well, only if nihilist cares to look into them. You guys are kind of teaming up on him as if he has any interest. It doesn't, it's not up to him to decide. If he's not interested, nihilist. If you're not interested, then why are we pushing it, right?
I was just trying to understand his thinking.
Well, I'm just saying that. Like the design hypothesis is not a scientific hypothesis, right? That's all I'm trying to say, is that you can't have evidence for this design hypothesis, right? And so that's all I'm committed to, right? I'm not committed to saying that chance is a good explanation, or that there's not that there is a natural explanation, or that there's not a natural explanation. I don't need to have a good explanation to recognize a bad explanation, right?
Well, that's
Okay.
the non-believer's problem. They don't have any alternative justification. I want to point out too, Tommy, and to Remy, you were stating, well, why are we even talking about this? I look at it like this. I try to be optimistic about this, even though this individual is most likely not going to listen to us and just argue till the cows come home. I feel that some people out there might be interested in seeking the truth, and hopefully they'll hear it. Be right back.
Actually, I disagree.
Wow.
Nihilist, I acknowledge that you are a very intelligent and very knowledgeable and civil person to talk to, so I don't throw this out as if you are not going to be listening and you won't ponder this in 10 years. So, it's unforeseeable.
I think one of the most important things I said tonight, right, is that I don't need to have an explanation to know a bad explanation when I see one, right?
Right. Exactly.
Let me ask you a question. If you're walking through the woods or a desert or somewhere, and you come across an arrowhead, is that evidence to you that it made itself, or is that evidence that there was a hunter that made the arrowhead?
Philip, why are you chuckling?
Why are you not chuckling?
Get your mic if you're gonna chuckle.
Well, if he's consistent on that, he would have to say that the arrowhead is not evidence for a hunter.
I'll just say that most people would pick it up and not even give a damn where it come from. I'm sorry.
Right, but you have to determine one way or another. I mean, if you're going to consider the how it came to be, either it made itself, or the universe or whatever made it, or there was a hunter that made it and used it to shoot things with.
Well, the problem, I mean, there's a number of problems with this analogy, right? Firstly, we have background knowledge of things that people do, right? People are interested in hunting. So we have specific intentions that we're trying to find out, and those specific intentions do generate predictions.
It really doesn't matter, because it's still one thing or the other.
Oh man, yeah. What I was trying to say is that those specific intentions generate predictions. But you can imagine a robot crafted it, but we wouldn't say a robot is intentional. For example, you could have a robotic carving machine that was just let on its on its own to roam the desert or something like that, and it could just be carved.
There's problems with that because it's chipped, it's not carved, and a robot wouldn't be really able. It's very hard to make an arrowhead. It's not an easy thing.
Well, I'm saying, right. That aside, perhaps there was an arrowhead making robot, right? Like, let's just use the thought experiment for what it is. We don't say that it's intentional. We say that it's just reactional, right? So the problem is that even if it were a human, there's no I mean, apart from what we normally ascribe intentionality, because I think whether or not something has intentionality is going to be a basic belief. That is to say, I don't think there's going to be any evidence for anything that has intentionality. But I think that I think that it would be consistent with just having a mechanistic explanation of a human creating a arrowhead, right? You might be able to appeal to biological facts about humans, just like you appeal to biological facts about animals to explain their behavior, right? And I think that's going to be true for humans. Even if we do intentionality, let's do that. We are assuming that there's an intentional explanation. explanation for that. We're going to posit a specific intention which does make predictions, and then we're going to go looking for evidence of that predictions. But we're not positing a designer. We're not merely positing a designer, right? We're also positing a specific intention that we're looking to countenance, right?
But a robot would have intention because it would have a maker too, and it still have a maker. But the problem is that natural things can't make specific things.
Well, mind you, I actually, as a kid, I did find some arrow-shaped stone, and it was actually stone. It wasn't because it wasn't properly, it wasn't balanced in its edges, but it was the same shape, and you probably could use it as a weapon if you knew how. So nature could erode, but I'm just just trying to play. I'm just trying to play skeptic here. That's all. But,
Right.
The
problem with that is
erosion could help. That's all.
The problem with that is when you go to try to make an arrowhead, you find out it's not very easy.
Mm-hmm.
If it was eroded that way, and it came out in the shape of an arrowhead, it wouldn't have been chipped.
Mm-hmm.
And arrowheads are chipped, and they're symmetrical, of course, and balanced and everything, which is not an easy thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right, like I said, when we make this inference of a designer from an arrowhead, we're not merely positing that some designer exists, right? We're positing a designer with a specific intention exists, and then we go out and look for evidence of that hypothesis, right? And so we have an intention that does predict a phenomenon. We say, what else can we predict from that phenomenon, right? And then we go and look for evidence for it. And that's what I'm saying is inconsistent with the intelligent design argument, because we don't have any specific intentions that wouldn't be merely ad hoc, right?
In other words, you're trying to say that an arrowhead has a maker, but directed living organisms can't possibly have a maker.
I'm saying you can make an inference towards a designer from an arrowhead based on background knowledge of things that human beings do and intentions that human beings had, right? But you can't do that with a god, first of all, because who knows what the intentions of a god are, right?
Well, wait a second. What if you didn't know what the history or the background of the arrow was, or what if an alien got here on Earth and knew nothing about humans and knew nothing about arrowheads, or it could be anything, but why couldn't you make an inference, or why wouldn't that point to design? I mean, I think the alien is a good example.
Well, if an alien came to Earth and he didn't know anything about humans or their lifestyle, say he has no observation, why would it be inconsistent for him to think that some rocks are just formed that way?
Good point.
Well,
Jungle mentioned earlier that actual Indian arrowheads actually do have a configuration of how it was chipped by another rock to give it aerodynamics.
I mean, that would just
you could see it beveled on each edge.
You would be relying on his ignorance, on the alien's ignorance of how nature actually operates, and you would be assuming that he is ignorant and incorrect about nature.
Well, we stipulated that he's ignorant by hypothesis, right?
Ignorant of humans and
Right. Yeah. So I was just going along with the thought experiment. We assumed he's ignorant. If he knows things about humans, then obviously he'll make a prediction based on his knowledge of humans.
Okay. Well, what if he came here and saw an airplane? Like a biplane sitting in the field. I mean, we could make it something a little more obvious. What if an alien came here and saw a biplane?
Well, presumably you would have to generate some explanation for it, right? And that explanation is going to make certain predictions, and then he'll have to look for evidence of that, of those. So he'll have to look for confirmation of deposits of that theory, right?
Well, the thing is that the arrowhead is symmetrical and uniform, the same as a biplane. So anytime you see something symmetrical and uniform, you know that it's not a natural occurrence, because natural things doesn't do symmetrical or uniform things, balanced things.
I think
So
he's basically saying if you can't go out and search and find what's responsible, then it's a bad inference. Is basically what it boils down to.
Well, I'm just saying there can't be evidence for it. It's just an ad hoc justification, right? If the alien were to posit a designer and he didn't have any evidence for it, right? He just came and he found the plane. That would be consistent with some natural mechanism producing the plane that he just didn't know about, right?
Well, if it works, it's got to make a.
How many people in here agree that the universe is mathematically coherent, which is the definition of rational and logical?
I do.
Yeah.
Can you, Mr. Nihilist, think of one single thing that is rational, logical, mathematically coherent without a mind? Go ahead.
What are you talking about? Presumably everything is like rationality is like a property of people, right? So I don't.
Well, you would say that it requires a mind in order for rationality and logic to be comprehended, right?
Yeah, I mean, I already said rationality is stipulated about minds. The only things that are rational are minds.
Right, and everyone agreed in here that the entire universe is rational and logical, mathematically coherent. In fact, Albert Einstein was actually able to sit there and give mathematical equations based upon his study of the universe. We do science based upon the fact that the universe is mathematically coherent. And you said we require a mind in order to be able to comprehend rationality and logic. I appreciate you pointing that out.
Well, I just said that rationality is a property of minds, right? The universe doesn't have the property of being rational.
Okay, so the universe isn't rational or logical to you, so we can't do science based upon it now.
I didn't say we couldn't do science, right? The universe has relations. The universe has physical relations. Only minds are rational. The universe doesn't have intentions. The universe doesn't have intentionality. So the universe is not rational, right? Because you have
of course it's rational and logical. It's mathematically coherent. If it were not, we couldn't do math on it. We couldn't study it. If we lived in a universe where it was shifting in and out and being in all kinds of different proportions at all times, we'd never be able to learn anything about it or be able to comprehend it mathematically, because it'd be so abstract we'd go nuts.
I think the word we're looking for is consistent and order rather than rationality.
Yes.
Because mathematics has to be consistent in order for it to be communicated as mathematics 1 plus 1. Because if 1 plus 2 equals 1, then it's not consistent.
But wouldn't rationality and order seems to me to be synonyms, or sort of close synonyms anyway.
No, rationality is an intentional concept. It has to do with beliefs. That's why when you say someone is a rational person, you're saying they have consistent beliefs, right?
But something that has order is going to be rational, and vice versa.
What do you mean? No, it's not.
Well, rationality is more about clairvoyance and the ability
rationality
to
presupposes a mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
Only things with beliefs are rational things, right? Rock is not a rational. Well, presuming you guys share the same ideology as I do with regards to rocks having minds, right? Rocks are not rational things. They're irrational. They don't have rationality. They're not irrational because they don't have, inconsistent beliefs, and they're not rational because they don't have any beliefs.
All right, if you don't mind, Remy, I'd like to share with the room what the word order actually means by definition. The arrangement or disposition of people or things in relation to each other according to a particular sequence, pattern, or method. Now, the fact that we're actually talking about mathematical coherency and rationality and logic, that falls right into mathematical coherency.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I was going to point out, looking at the Niagara Falls, it's not exactly rational to not understand how it forms and how it functions and all the mathematics that comes with it. But it is rational to come to a conclusion and to formulate the explanation with mathematics. So there's rationality involved with the human element, but rationality, if there was no human element in this, so say it was 500 years ago before anybody even saw or heard the Niagara Falls, it wasn't exactly rational to conclude anything, except for that, I'm hearing something like thunder, and there's no cloud to the sky. So that's rational dealing with logic, but it's not necessarily why the Niagara Falls exists and why it forms and what the cause and the effects are. So
I mean, even if it has to do with beliefs at all, it's going to have to do with rationality, right?
hmm so there is relation between, like Brett was saying, there is relation though between rationality and clear logic. So if logic is absolutely the mechanism behind physics in law, the laws of physics are, then either logic is obviously is obviously
That's right,
dependent,
Remy.
non-dependent on humanity or any mind, and it governs mathematics, or there is a mind.
I'm a bit concerned about calling it a mechanism, right? Logic isn't a mechanism purported to explain anything. Logic is presupposed by everything, at least.
Yep.
As far as I think there are different mathematics that presuppose different logics, but that's a very complicated conversation that I don't really want to get into right now. Like there are pair consistent logics and things like that, but I think the idea that I was trying to say is if you're going to be a Platonist about logic, right, then I think that's a bit of a different conversation than whether or not there is rationality, right?
Well, I think it's important, and we'll go to the dictionary again. Logic, a system or set of principles underlying the arrangements of elements in a computer or electronic device so as to perform a specified task. Reasoning, conducted or assessed according to strict principles of validity. Does this universe not have properties? Does it not have processes and functions and purposes for those functions and what they result in?
No, I don't see how you could discern that.
Only
Well, it'd
living
be really
organisms.
hard for you to give a naturalistic explanation if you don't believe the universe has some amount of processes going on in it in order for you to exist.
Right. Well, I mean, I assume that the universe is consistent, right? That it does behave according to natural laws, right? But that doesn't mean that those laws were intended.
That's very true. That is very true. Yeah.
It could be some brute contingent fact that we have the laws we have. In some other universe, in some other possible world, we could have a bunch of different laws where instead of when a bowling ball or when a billiard ball hits another billiard ball, a rainbow flies across the sky. You could have a completely different.
But that is where rationality and philosophy actually does take some dominance over this topic, because to conclude that nature is governed by logic without a mind is completely insane by philosophical means and understanding. I dare you to try to look into the masters of philosophy when it comes to the cosmos, and find that they actually do not. It's find if they ever actually don't omit to some sort of intention, purpose, and mechanism to how reality works, and why. Of course they end everything with why, but the word why implies intention. It's this. Rather than.
Sometimes it does. I mean, you can ask why does this occur rather than this, and you can give a natural explanation for it. I mean, I think that's really a linguistic. I think that's really a linguistic and semantic sort of idea. You can mean it. You mean why?
Let me ask you this. Do you believe that a trillion things, a trillion times a trillion things had to organize themselves and arrange themselves just right in order for you to be having this conversation with us today?
Well, I mean, how liberal are you being with, with things? Because I obviously believe that I exist, right? And I obviously believe that there's a lot that goes into any natural explanation of why I exist, right? We have to account for
Would you
all
state
the.
that trillions and trillions times trillions of things literally had to go just right in organization and arrangement for
Right.
you to exist today?
I think the problem, and this is another objection that I have against the whole fine-tuning concept, is that the metrics by which we measure fine-tuning are completely arbitrarily decided, right? You could imagine another being that you can imagine different constants or different ideas of constants that pick out like much larger intervals than the ones we use, and falling into those degrees, right, rather than just using the arbitrary set of numbers that we pick out, would be completely coarse, right? We could conceptually divide the amount of variance ad infinitum, right? So the amount of variance that you could need could be potentially infinite between one number and the next, right? What makes you decide that we're picking out these units of measurement as opposed to some other units of measurements, right? So I already disagree with the terminology you're using when you're saying trillions and trillions of things.
Well, the issue is what you just said was this infinite amount of numbers. You don't have an infinite amount of numbers. Stephen Hawking states that the universe has a beginning. It has a start, and it is accelerating right now. It is not considered infinite. We're not living in the steadfast theory anymore, as some atheists used to believe. So trillions and trillions and trillions of things that you just admitted had to happen, yet you don't believe miracles are true?
I didn't. Well, first of all, right. What I said is I deny your metric offhand, right. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying what you're saying is in fact the metric that you're using. You're saying trillions and trillions. What trillions are you talking about? What equations are you talking about? Because I can agree that there have been different equations that are going to account for the fine-tuning of the universe, right? But the fine-tunedness is going to depend on how you're using those equations. If you are using a different metric, that might change whether or not the universe appeared fine-tuned for you, right? Imagine you're trying to imagine you're throwing, like, as an individual the size of a normal human being, imagine you're trying to throw a ball within any particular inch, right? You're trying to throw a ball within any particular inch, right? That's going to be astronomically difficult for being the size of a human, right? Because you'll have, imagine you're trying to throw a football at a specific time, like beyond 50 yards, and you're trying to throw it at a very specific inch, right? Well, that would make it very complicated, that you're very hard to hit, right? But if you change the metric that you're trying to hit and you just try to hit some yard past 50 yards or something like that, just some random yard, that increases the likelihood that you'll get it. If you change it to beyond that, right, to where you just have to hit something that's from here to Kentucky, wherever you live, right, some place between here and Kentucky, that increases the probability that you'll hit exactly what you want to hit, right? So what I'm saying is the metric by which you're measuring trillions and trillions is just arbitrary, right? Because you can calculate the probability of hitting any one particular inch, but who says that you have to use an inch as a metric, right?
All right. Mr. Remy and Jungle, are you still there?
Yeah, what's up?
Yeah.
I would like you guys to destroy me on this question that I'm about to ask. Since when has a hydrogen bomb or nuclear missile ever went off and life came out of it? Go ahead.
Never. No, but the thing is, fine-tuning is one thing, but the sequencing of biology is a whole different animal.
I was going to use
Pardon.
volcanoes, but that's not exactly what you asked for. Because life comes after volcanoes a lot. Mind you, that's because life already existed in the environment outside of the perimeter where the
Let,
volcano
let
hit.
me make it easier on you, Remy, as well as Jungle, if you don't mind. How many explosions and hydrogen bombs, atom bombs, nuclear missiles, how many would it take to get us a life form out of it?
Brett Keane, why are you
It's
what
never gonna
about
happen.
what about that? Do you think any theory of abiogenesis predicts that people launch nuclear bombs?
Well, I'm talking about the entire universe. I'm not just talking about abiogenesis and evolution and all that, just the universe alone. Amazing, extraordinary. But you think that that's how you came to be. You just poofed here. Well, that's your deal.
I don't think anything, right? When I don't have an explanation, I don't propose a bad explanation. That's all I said. That's all I'm committed to.
Well, why don't you provide an alternative justification? Why require for God believers to do this for you? What's your alternative?
He's not committed to answering that. That's all. He's
It's
not.
Right.
it's the
But
only evidence.
don't you think instead of non-believers trying to screw with God believers all day on the explanation, come up with your own. Come up with your own position on this.
Yeah, they don't have a position.
Well, look, look. If I came out if I came out of my room the next day and there was water all over the ground, right? And I'm saying I don't know how that water got there, right? Presumably, I know nothing about the forecast and I know nothing about the sprinkler system where I live or something like that. We'll just presume my ignorance for that, right?
Mhm.
So I come out of my apartment and I see, well, what the ground is all wet, and then someone comes up to me and says, well, it was obviously the moles that live underground that carry buckets of water to the surface and dump them out, right? I don't need to provide an alternative explanation. I don't need to say no, it rained, or no, it didn't do that, to say, look, there's no evidence of what you're suggesting. You're suggesting that the moles would be there. Well, that predicts that if I go and I dig, I should find moles. I don't find moles, right? Or, I mean, the intentional design hypothesis is even worse because it doesn't actually make any predictions. It just posits an unfalsifiable hypothesis. But let's just say we're working with falsifiable hypotheses, right? If I go out there and say I don't need to provide an explanation for why the ground is wet to know that a bad explanation when I see one, right?
But you never proved it's a bad explanation to have a maker, invisible maker.
Well, I
Yeah,
may
we can sit here all day and give you all kinds of different information and all that. You can continue to throw it's bad, 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 but then you state, well, I'm just going to sit here and not give any kind of alternatives. That seems a bit unfair. That's one of the reasons why I admire theology and philosophy, and I have a great deal of respect for science and what science is capable of. But you're not even trying to find an explanation. You just want to tell people that they're all wrong. That doesn't sound like a truth seeker. That just sounds like someone who wants to
sound like a
play
truth.
WWE wrestling for today.
Why would it not sound like a truth seeker, right? I'm saying I know what's conducive to truth. Maybe I don't have an idea. Maybe I don't have an idea. Why
don't you seek it out? You have limited time. Why don't you go out and try to find some alternative? If it's not God and our explanations are bad and your time is limited, if your only commodity is time, then why don't you find a naturalistic explanation then?
I mean, I'm asking what it has to do with anything, right?
It has to do with you finding your answers. If you think that God is a bad explanation, then apparently we have failed you, and I apologize. So go find the naturalistic explanation. Find your truth.
Well, I
There's
mean,
not enough time for naturalistic explanation.
presumably
Time,
there's naturalistic explanations that are bad, right? But I don't think for one thing, I think there's going to be brute contingency. So I don't subscribe to the principle of sufficient reason. Not a weak one, not a strong one, right? I don't subscribe to either of the principles of sufficient reason. So I don't even think. That I think that there's going to bottom out in brute contingency. I think there's just going to be some facts without explanation, right? I don't know which facts those are, but that's the way I think it is.
well, you realize that there's no possibility of a natural explanation in 20 billion years.
Wait,
In
what?
20 billion years, you can't even hardly make. You can't even. I mean, hardly make. You can't make a single average size protein in 20 billion years by chance.
What does chance have to do with anything? You might have a mechanism, right?
Well,
It might not be chance. You might have a mechanism, right? Like it's just saying that. It's just saying that, like, well, what are the chances that if you hit a billiard ball, it'll roll into another hole? Well,
mechanisms have a maker. Okay.
I mean, I don't buy that.
You keep on giving the ball analogy. If you don't mind me giving you something a little bit more intense. If I were to give you a big bag right now, and we were to take a bunch of computers that operate perfectly, if one such exists, bust them all into little pieces and throw them into a bag, how long would you need to shake all these broken computers and then be able to pull out a Game Boy? How much time would you need on that?
I don't even know if that's possible.
You don't think that that's possible, even with the material already being there?
Well, I think it's logically possible, but I don't know if there would be a mechanism, right? I wouldn't posit shaking as a mechanism to accomplish a Game Boy.
Why do you believe that it's logically possible to shake the bag for a long period of time and then pull out a Game Boy?
Yeah. Of course it's logically possible. You can't derive a contradiction from it, right?
So you really are convinced that you could shake a bag for a good long time, it's going to come out a Game Boy?
Well, I don't know if that would happen in the actual world, but presumably in some possible world it happens, right?
In some possible world, like the Twilight Zone, Parallel Dimension or something?
Didn't you just say that you respect philosophy? Are you completely ignorant of modality?
Well, I understand mathematics as well, and I just don't see shaking a bag of pieces and garbage is going to sit there and create any kind of intelligence or compatible working functional machine. It just has never actually happened by itself. You don't have that happen.
That's not what I asked. I asked if you were aware of modality. The probabilities concerned with that are going to be specific to the actual world, right? There might be a mechanism in some other possible world that makes it highly likely that when you shake a bag that you'll get a Game Boy, right? But that might not be the case in the actual world. In fact, I would bet it's not the case. You know, inductively, I would infer that it's not the case.
Okay, so what world can I shake computer parts and pull out a Game Boy?
Well, presumably in the possible world in which it exists, right? In which it exists, in which every time someone puts computer parts into a bag, someone shakes it and it comes out with a Game Boy, presumably in that world.
Okay, so you believe that there's a possible world in which these things can happen. Is there a possible world or universe where God can exist for you as well?
Well, the God of classical theism, no. The God of classical theism necessarily does not exist. Potential designer, I guess, could exist in any possible world, right? I just wouldn't have a reason to believe in it. I obviously don't think the design hypothesis is incoherent unless you're being specific with the designer.
See, this is the issue, and I was not trying to offend you earlier, but you stated very clearly with side 10 that you don't believe in absolutes. But by claiming that it's impossible for the classic deity, as you pointed out, not to exist, you've just made a certainty claim. You've asserted absolute.
Yeah, I have.
Okay, well now the burden of proof is on you. You've made an absolute claim.
Well, I mean, if you want to get into the various arguments I hold against classical theism, we can do that.
Well, if you'd like to, it's up to you. It's Jungle Jargon's room, though. He's hosting it. Me, I let people talk to me until they're blue in the face, but I don't know if Jungle's got the time for that. We're still trying to mix the bag of computer parts.
I wanted to make a funny comment. Only the Sith believe in the absolute.
Yeah, I'm good with time.
Well, Remy, that's great and everything, and I think it's an interesting discussion, but sadly I don't feel like it's going to go anywhere.
What discussion? What did I say? What?
I don't. See, this is the thing with the absolute claims. I don't absolutely believe that. That I know for a fact that God is. You know what I'm saying? I have faith. The difference between faith and, you know what I'm saying, and absolute is the big difference.
For me, it's the only evidence there is evidence of God. There's no
Right.
evidence of anything else.
That's exactly what I was about to say. Is like I have faith that the evidence points me towards that being true. You know what I'm saying? It's not I claim absolutely that this is true. It's just I have faith that that's what it is.
Well, that's the thing about faith and hope that a lot of people, for some reason, don't get the understanding of. Faith is, of course, hope, and usually that hope leads to a conclusion. You're either going to find out true or false, but there's always going to be a conclusion at the end of hope and faith.
But then again, I mean, as being a hardcore extreme Christian that I am, I would say I absolutely know God has done something for me. I know something changed in my life that I can't explain through natural means.
I
Yeah.
hear you there. Well, I'm going to go out and have me a cancer stick real quick, folks.
Stop
Be right
it.
back.
Yeah, we could all tell stories about what happened to us or how God
I
dealt with
know.
us.
Yeah.
And the thing is that atheists don't want to hear it.
Well, it's not even just atheists.
Sure we do.
What I was saying was all of our personal experiences are not universal evidence. What I don't understand what the atheists or
There is.
non-believers
So-
look for universal evidence that makes everybody all of a sudden believe. Now, the problem with looking through natural means for supernatural evidence, there's a problem right there. You can't find supernatural evidence through natural means. So,
Before I head off to get my my cancer stick and all that, I'm curious, nihilist, do you at least believe that it is possible for someone to be rational, logical, coherent, yet at the same time have faith in God?
Well, depends on what that commits them to. It depends on what the belief in God commits one to. I mean, if
well,
it
I
does,
think the creator of the MRI machine was a Christian. He was logical and rational when he created that, right?
well, I think rationality is going to fall on a spectrum, right? So I mean, there's going to be a spectrum of rationality that, you know, with respect to some things, some individuals will be rational, and with respect to other beliefs they have, they can be irrational, you know.
Is it rational to say that directed working things have a maker?
Well, I mean, I suppose you could make that inference. You'd have to figure out what that actually commits you to, right? Like I said, there's no contradiction in it. It's just not.
As opposed to undirected undirected things making you without
Well,
intention.
well, directed. I mean, directed. It seems like when you make the distinction between directed and indirected, right? The distinction already implies that there's a designer. So obviously, it would be incoherent for someone to say something directed doesn't have a maker, right? That's incoherent, right? It's just figuring out whether something is directed or not.
Biology is directed.
I mean, I wouldn't just accept that premise straight out. You'd have to have an argument for it.
Is directed by a pre-existing set of directives.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you.
No living organism can ever exist without written directives.
Well, what do you mean when you say written, right? Because presumably you don't believe that it's written.
Sequence directives.
Like that design the creature, or what are you referring to? Like something for it to do?
Well, the directives make all the directed working things, the mechanisms that are essential for us to exist, and it builds our mind and everything for us to think and reason.
Can you restate that? Jungle, I was paying attention to something else.
I don't know what I said. the directives make all the mechanisms that are essential for us to exist, and they form all the all the nervous system and everything, the circulatory system and the mind and everything for us to be able to think and reason.
So, like I said, right, I think that everything that you said is consistent with just causal tendencies.
What's the tendency for the directives to be sequenced?
Well, I
Billions of
assume that there's a difference between how we've described something and how it acts, right? Like you can describe, I can say, you can describe something intentionally, instrumentally, right? Like I could say, a gopher, thought that this whatever food he was eating tasted good, right? But I don't actually think that gophers have thoughts, right? So I would just be instrumentally attributing intentionality to it. Likewise, you can do that with any sort of notion in science, right? That doesn't mean that there's intentionality there unless that's what you actually believe, right? You're going to be committed to the fact that there's intentionality there. But the way, if we describe something as directed or something, that could just be a linguistic turn of phrase, right? So it really depends on what you mean. Because
it's literally directed, literally, physically, and actually directed.
Well, I mean, I don't see how there's going to be evidence for that. Right?
Because if it wasn't directed exactly the way it is, it wouldn't even exist or work.
Well, I don't see it. That's the premise. That's the very premise that I don't actually accept, right? I don't accept that because I think that there could be some sort of naturalistic explanation, some mechanism that just operates, that's underpinning all the observations that we see.
But we know that there is no mechanism because a mechanism has a maker.
Well, I don't accept
Not
that.
by definition, no.
Yeah, a mechanism, anything that works with a function for a purpose has a maker.
A better question would be, a mind only creates a mind. A consciousness doesn't just spawn out of nothing.
Well, I mean, I already had this discussion, right?
Why not?
If you don't have an explanation for consciousness, that doesn't imply that whatever alternative explanation someone offers is a good explanation.
Well, you don't have one that's good either.
I'd rather have no explanation than one that I know is probably bad.
Okay, well, I'm talking to one person at a time, not two different atheists. Excuse me.
Okay.
Well, what he said is exactly what I agree with, right? I'd rather have
Well,
more.
I'm talking to one atheist at a time.
Okay, so we both agree. You can talk to either one of us you want.
Right, but I mean, obviously, even if I don't have an explanation for consciousness, neither do you.
So what does that have to do with anything?
Because it's either one or the other.
Each other questions right now. That would have to do with consciousness.
I'm just saying that there's
That's to do with philosophy.
Okay, but right, all I'm saying is that there's no inference from the fact that consciousness exists that there was a maker of that consciousness, right?
Which is more likely?
Well, I don't think there's any likelihood of there being a maker because I already gave this argument, right? Intentionality doesn't make any predictions, right? Because intentionality is consistent with there being no minds, right? A god could have just not made any minds, right?
No, that's a false claim right there.
Intentionality is a mind, yeah.
Right. Well, right. I'm just saying
when you say intentionality, you can't say there's no mind behind intentionality.
I didn't say that there's no mind behind intentionality. I said it's consistent with every observation, is what I said.
Well, actually, some animals in the wild can have intentionality. But anyways.
All I'm saying is that it's consistent with every possible observation because, you say there's consciousness that exists, but I'm saying, look, that's fine. We can agree that consciousness exists, but I don't see how that implies that there's an intentional being because any intentional being, they could have had the desire to create minds. They could have had no desire to create minds at all, right? So minds aren't going to raise the probability of an intentional agent, right? That's not going to increase the likelihood that there's an intentional agent there because it's consistent with there being no minds, right? Let's say there was an intentional being, right? He could have sat around and done nothing. So why is him making minds evidence that he exists rather than him sitting around and doing nothing evidence that he exists?
Well, the evidence is that there was a mind was made. That's,
I just, like I said, I don't see how that could be evidence because
it's
any
it's the only evidence there is.
any unfalsifiable hypothesis, right? Any unfalsifiable hypothesis whatsoever is going to be consistent with every observation. So I don't see how there can be evidence for unfalsifiable hypotheses because, to me, what it means for there to be evidence is that you have an observation that increases the probability of some observation. But if no that increases the probability of your hypothesis being true. I'm sorry. But if no observation increases the probability of your hypothesis being true, then I don't see how there can be evidence for it, right? So what I'm saying is
Every observation is that of a maker.
yeah, see, that's what I'm saying. I don't see how there can be evidence for that claim. That sounds like an unfalsifiable hypothesis.
Well, we know from science that matter consists of energy. We know that energy is being depleted. We know that matter is diminishing, is going away as energy is depleted. And so there had to have been a power to make the universe.
But I already said that I don't. I already said I don't understand how that's consistent with there being agency. That's consistent with there being no agency, right? I already said that. You haven't argued for the claim that the hypothesis that you're rendering is not simply an unfalsifiable hypothesis.
Can you give a naturalistic explanation on why it is that you are developed to the point where you can interpret the universe?
No.
So if you can't interpret the universe and you're not able to interpret reality according to the nihilistic definition, then how do you ever expect to get any kind of information? Well, that's the definition of nihilistic, which is what you are. That's what you claim.
Stop straw manning me immediately, right? I don't usually interrupt people, but you needed to stop straw manning me immediately. You asked me if I had an explanation for why I can interpret the universe. I said no. That doesn't mean that I can't interpret the universe, right? That just means I don't have an explanation for why I can interpret the universe.
Okay, then how do you interpret the universe then? Go for it.
What do you mean how do I interpret it? Why, I obviously don't believe in a God, right? I obviously think that science can explain via mechanisms how the world works and things like that. The question is really vague, so I don't really know what you're asking.
Well, I'm asking you as an individual, how do you interpret the universe?
Well, I already said that, right?
It sounded like you were telling me what you're not capable of doing or not doing, but you didn't tell me how you do it.
Well, I think that science has plenty of explanations for plenty of natural phenomena, so I interpret a lot of the scientific claims made as provisionally true, right?
Right. Did you just real fast? Have you actually talked to these scientists personally, or just heard the information on a documentary?
Well, I mean, I've talked to a few scientists, but I hardly see how that's here or there.
Okay, so the information that you get from the universe is the interpretation of other human beings that you apparently have put trust in our authority.
I mean, generally, yeah. Generally, I don't know anything about.
So you don't actually know that this is to be true. All you know is what you've been told.
Well, I assume that that it's justified in virtue of the fact that these people are experts. Like if I go to a nuclear physicist and ask how a nuclear reactor works, right, and I'm not aspiring to be a nuclear physicist, presumably I can take his word for it, or I can go and talk to other nuclear physicists and see if what he says comports with what they say, or if I really wanted to, I could just go out and do the tests myself, right?
All right, so if someone is labeled an expert, then that means right there that you'll just trust it, right?
No, I mean, obviously they have to submit their stuff for peer review. They can't just be, it can't just be an arbitrary label, right? It's got to be because they've actually earned the title of expertise.
Okay, what peer reviews have you been reading lately?
Well, it depends. I mean, I haven't read any lately because I haven't been investigating any science lately.
Well, how long has it been since you read you some peer reviews?
I don't know, probably when I read stuff about astronomy and black holes. It was probably the last time, which sometime last year.
What do you think that Richard Dawkins is talking about? He's an atheist, as you know. He states that our DNA is like a computer,
I think that
almost as
Richard,
if a computer programmer scripted it and pasted it in place.
I think that Richard Dawkins is a dumbass.
Well, goodness gracious, atheists tend to be throwing these guys under the bus, but they're supposed to be the experts, right?
Well, I think he could probably school me about biology, right? But I could own Richard Dawkins about philosophy any day of the week.
Well, goodness gracious, if I ever get Richard Dawkins to take any of my challenges, I'm going to make sure to invite you in to do that.
Yeah, because I will destroy him.
Okay, you've made a claim that science has explanations of things, except that science has never come up with an explanation for any kind of natural cause for any biological function or form.
Well, that sounds like an unsupported claim, right? I'm sure there are tons of. I'm sure in biology they have plenty of mechanisms, right? If I invited my friend scientist Sam in here, I'm sure he could explain all sorts of mechanisms that biological functions have produce different.
No, you're talking about something. Biological function already exists. It already has a maker. You can't use what's already been directed as evidence of no director, no maker. You have to.
I must have
You have to
misinterpreted.
show a natural cause for a directed living organism.
Well, I mean, I assume provisionally that there's a natural cause, just because for every explanation that we've sought in the past, there's been a naturalistic explanation for it.
But that's what I'm saying. You have to understand that they've totally failed at coming up with any kind of natural cause of any kind for any part of evolution or abiogenesis.
Well, I mean,
I mean, you have to see that. You have to see that, don't you?
I mean, I don't really know. I'm not really. I don't study biology. I assume that they have mechanisms.
Well, you can't really discuss biology because you have to understand what biology is.
Yeah, well, I would actually say that nihilist that you are not actually purporting to be able to defend these propositions. So it's not exactly a reasonable argument to tackle nihilist with these questions, because he hasn't accepted any challenge and shown any reason to give you a logical or a secular response to these questions.
Remy, I think that that's an excellent point. You have managed that. You're a God believer, right? Just curious.
Yeah.
You continue to tell Jargon that his arguments and points are wrong, and of course you also try to dissect my arguments, which is great. I think a truth seeker should do that. But instead of constantly, throwing us under the bus, why don't you give some good arguments and explanation? I'd like to learn from you.
Actually, I did before you came in for about 20 minutes.
Well, I haven't heard anything since I've been in here. Did you just stop because I came in? Go ahead.
Actually, I talked about how the mind is you can't explain the mind, and there's no difference between yourself and a gorilla or a dog if you believe that there's naturalistic means to that which creates the illusion to a mind. I gave the explanation that there's natural proof in the very real remains of the ruins of Sodom and Gomorrah that have been completely encased and burned to the ground in sulfur. That is not explainable by any natural means, because there's no volcano nearby. There's no rational logic behind the idea that a meteor up in Russia could have caused it to happen. there's no shifting of the environment that could have caused it to happen. I did quite a bit of arguing before you
We
came in.
have evidence for Sodom and Gomorrah and its destruction, which you pointed out very eloquently. Did our friend Nihilist in here give any explanation why this happened with no volcano nearby?
I wasn't really asking for any. It wasn't really a.
Well, isn't it important that we find out if that even is a piece of evidence to him? It seems to me no volcano nearby, a city that existed in the Bible that was destroyed, and here you got the sulfur, you got all this remnants. That seems pretty solid.
Well, Nihilist, would you like to answer that or no?
Yeah, I don't think I would call that, if that's true, right? If we don't have a good explanation, then I would just call that an unexplained phenomenon, right? I already said that before.
Okay.
Everything is unexplained to you. Nothing is explained.
Well, I think there are various things that are explained, right? Like I think that the movements of the planetary bodies are explained by relativity nicely.
And by the way, I didn't say either of you were wrong at all. I'm just saying that you guys shouldn't be presuming that Nihilist is of the mind and knowledge to answer these questions, and whether or not he's actually agreed or taken up the mantle saying he could answer these questions and has the knowledge or has a diploma or a education in these matters. And so it's not necessarily like I'm saying these are nonsensical questions. These are good questions, but they're only good questions to one who actually has a response. So he hasn't had a response to these topics in the past, and you guys have been talking to him on the same similar topics for over a half hour now. I don't know exactly how long. And Nihilist, you're not actually saying I don't know, but you are pleading to the idea that these things could be known, but it's still unknowable at the point.
I'll say straight up when I don't know something, you know.
Right.
Also, I don't know anything about biology. I probably know some. I have remedial knowledge of biology. You know?
Yeah. So as well as astronomy, cosmology.
Yeah.
Physics. Yeah. So.
Yeah. I study philosophy.
Well, there you go.
Well, how come you don't seem to have as much fascination with biology as you have with theology? Now, I'm just saying, I've been around the internet. I watch a lot of live stuff, and I've seen that you seem very, very interested in having discussions with theologians. Why are you not seeking out biology? Obviously, you think that there's a naturalistic explanation for it.
Because I'm just not interested in biology, right? I already said I'm interested in philosophy.
I think that you're attracted to theology, and I think you're attracted to the process of God is what it is, because you spend a great deal of time with theologians.
Yeah, philosophy of religion is a particular interest of me. I don't see what that has to do with anything.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think you feel like you're so attracted to this that you have to be in the middle of it so much? There's got to be a reason for this.
Maybe. I don't think it has to do with anything like beliefs. It probably just has to do with some tendency about myself.
A tendency, something's moving you towards it. If you thought all this was horse shit and bad explanation, you wouldn't waste your time, would you? You'd probably be off playing Nintendo or something.
Yeah, that's a good point, Brett. Because when it comes to the few people I've met who believe in a flat Earth, I don't see a purpose in engaging them or pursuing it. If they're talking in a room and challenge me, I'm just going to say, look, I don't care. I'm not interested in talking about it. It's a non-argument.
But to be fair, and I get what you're saying, Remy, but to be fair, I'd give them one shot, hear what they got to say, and if I'm not moved by it, I just simply don't have nothing to do with them no more. I go watch a cartoon or something, have a burger. You know, that's how I am.
Remy, do you mind if I ask you a personal question?
Sure.
Are you married?
No.
Okay.
I'm kind of screwed out of that option.
Well, then there's not a good. I don't have a good analogy, but I mean, I think there have been times where I've thought things that were completely separate from religion that I think are false when I talk to my wife about things, right? But the fact that I think that they're false motivates me to have conversations about them, and I think that that's enough, right? The fact that there might be a way to convince somebody, or that there might be or that I might be mistaken in my reasoning or something. Those types of things are intriguing to me.
Yeah, I get it. So the idea is that you can get the person you're talking to think critically and
Yeah, or
and
even
educate themselves, or if you can't educate them, then you should at least lead them in the way that they can critically
like
educate
even if
themselves by
10%.
experience or learning from someone else's logic vicariously.
Well,
So
even if they present a good argument, I'd be interested in listening to it, right? If there was an argument that I didn't have a response to, or there wasn't in the contemporary literature something that was unfounded and very sort of creative or something like that, and it was an interesting argument, I'd be interested in hearing it, right? And I would be interested in thinking about whether or not I was wrong about that. And so,
Well, how about this, Mr. Nihilist? Has there ever been, and I know that you've been in tons of discussions. I know you've even been in a few rooms I've been in the past. I think I was a bit more quiet at that point, just listening in. I love listening and learning. But has there ever been a time where you've heard a good explanation for God?
no.
Whew, goodness gracious. Well, it looks like we got our work cut out for us, Remy and Jungle.
Yeah, to me, it's hard because to me, all the evidence is of a God, because, one thing or another, it all ties together, and there's just no possibility of any natural explanation, and you have to account for the power. Where did the power come from? Everything is based on power and structure and different ways that things combine, and it's just totally amazing how everything works. And even like you said, the rotation of the planets, that's not understood because they don't even understand gravity. Where does that power come? They don't know what that power consists of or what causes it.
I got one more question for you, Nihilist, and this might come off odd to you. I haven't ever heard anybody ask you this, but do you want there to be a God?
No.
So how do you expect to ever find a God if you've already chosen from the get-go that you're not going to look for it or even want it?
Well, I didn't say that I wasn't going to look for it, right? I just said I don't want it to be the case. I might accept that. I might accept that it is the case, even if I wouldn't like it to be the case, right? Like if I found out I had cancer, I would accept it to be the case, even if I don't want cancer, right?
Right.
Well,
So you consider God on the same level as cancer, huh?
No, I was
that
analogy.
seems to be the case, though. Whether you want it or not, you have a maker. Go
Well,
ahead.
that was something that I said it was an analogy, right? I mean, I might not have any problems with a coherent God, but I think if you tried to rectify with a bunch of ad hoc explanations the God of the Bible, I would have quite a bit of problems with that deity existing. Least of which is the fact that I would go to hell, right?
There is one more thing that I'm curious about. I have seen you arguing with people. I think that I've actually seen you have discussions with Muslims, which is a part of the Abrahamic faith, perhaps even some Jews. But I don't see you dealing with Hindus, Buddhists, or any of the other religions out there. Why is this one the most appealing for you?
Well, this is the one that everyone's talking about.
So you want to go where the fun is, huh?
It's the only one that makes sense.
I mean, I thought we'd been over that, but
Well, I'm just curious. It's very important. I realized at one point in time I myself was a non-believer, but I found myself attracted to the Abrahamic religions. I just couldn't stop myself. I needed to talk to religious people all the time, needed to discuss with them. And here I am today for the last 3 years being a God believer now. It happens.
Yeah, because you got to keep searching, You got to keep wanting to know what the truth is. I mean, if there's no evidence on one side and all the evidence is on the other side, you go with the most logical thing. You don't go for the most unreasonable thing.
Right. Well, I mean, the girth of this hangout was me explaining how the God hypothesis is an unfalsifiable one, and therefore there can't be evidence for it, right? Like, I think.
Well, there's evidence for a hunter that you never saw and never knew existed because of the arrowhead.
Right, but that's only evidence if we have, I mean, we have to make some fundamental presuppositions that are going to be conducive to positing that as an explanation, right?
You have to put everything that you know together. It's the same thing.
Philip, over in the comments section, he states the truth could be that God doesn't exist. And I will ask then what is an alternative? Can you give a justification or position outside of the realm of God? I'm all ears, Philip.
Yeah, go ahead.
Are you asking me to render an argument against the existence of God?
No, I'm asking you to give your justification for your position. Let's go ahead and give you the benefit of the doubt. We're going to go ahead and put God over here on the right. He's not even in the conversation anymore. So how did you get here? Why do you have memories, creativity, intelligence? Why do you even exist for? What is your meaning and purpose? Or do you even have one that you've invented for yourself? Go ahead.
Well, I think that's rather tangential to what I said, right? I mean, I was just pointing out that the truth could be that God doesn't exist because of maybe the evidence or there's some type of incoherence in the concept of God, right?
You see, you're doing it. I already told you. Did you guys not hear me? We put God over here on the burner. He's just sitting over here chilling. He's not even in the conversation anymore. Then what happened? What is the truth then?
Right. I'm explaining what my statement meant, right? Which is why I don't think you're asking me that question. Like, it could be the case that I have no idea about any of those things, right? But
Did
I don't see
aliens put
like
you on a rock and send you here? Did you come out of nothingness? Did the dead inanimate objects of the universe simply clash together and voila, you're here? What happened for you? What's your theory?
Well, like I said, kind of like what Nihilist said before, right? Whether I have an explanation or not doesn't make yours any better. So
You're going to take the position that you don't have an explanation, but everybody else is wrong. Okay, that's fair enough.
Yeah, see, but this is what I've been saying. They like to attack people that have a position, but they don't have a position of their own. How's that?
That's and I'm not being rude to you. And Jungle, you put it perfectly. I'm not being rude to you, Mr. Nihilist or Philip. But if you guys don't believe that God is the explanation, then why don't you put all your efforts and your commodity of time into finding some naturalistic explanation? Don't waste your time with us loon tunes. Find the right answer then, huh?
What I said is not that. What I said is not that God. God could be an explanation, but simply fails to be an explanation. I said that God can't be an explanation, right? My whole argument is that there can't be evidence for God.
Well, of course, especially if you don't like what evidence is. I hear you.
Well, I just said what evidence was, right? Evidence is an observation that raises the probability of a hypothesis.
Which is you. You are the evidence.
I just said, man, we've been over this, right? I already said that me existing is consistent with there being a designer. Me not existing is consistent with there being a designer because the designer doesn't predict that I would exist, right? God could have not created me, right? So is a world without me the same evidence of his creator? Right? None of us could have existed, right? Is a world that doesn't have any objects in it? Is that consistent with evidence of God also?
Well, if you're not interested in a theological explanation and you're not willing to take the time or effort for a naturalistic explanation, I will advise this. There's a great couple TV shows on Netflix. One of them's called Persons of Interest. Fantastic. I'm also really into Criminal Minds. I think that's a great show as well. That thing's got like 10 seasons to it. Also, I like Heroes and oh yeah, Once Upon a Time. That's a good one too. Since nothing's going to work for you.
Maybe I'll just pose the one philosophical question is that I'm not asking you to answer. I'm just saying like to pose it out there just to ponder for the rest of your life is what Why do we as humans, not necessarily just for you again, but anybody here, why do we as humans assume that there's evidence from God? Because evidence requires there to be something feasible, something logical to observe that we know that we know emanates from that which we are accustomed to leave that evidence. So, in a crime scene, humans are capable and are the likely candidate agent for leaving blood behind. So blood is evidence of a crime. But if humans don't exist, if no creature exists on Earth, then blood would be evidence for what? So same thing with a god. What would evidence for a god be if we don't know the nature of a god except for that which is in a theological book? So if a theological book is not explanation enough for someone to acknowledge a God exists, then evidence cannot be found
Well,
because because we don't know a God exists outside of a.
let me suggest that we do know some attributes of God from the
Right.
creation,
Mm-hmm.
because of the fact that there's only one set of elements in the universe. There's 17 of the most common elements are essential working parts inside of us that are exactly what they have to be in order for us to exist.
But
So
still uses the presupposition for an intelligent cause as well. You're right. I'm not arguing. I'm not saying you're wrong, Jingle. I'm just from a
but
skeptic point of view.
I'm just saying this is how we can know the attributes of God.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the maker of the programmable elements that are programmed inside of us is the maker of the universe. So the maker of the universe has to be all-knowing, all-powerful, and able to do anything he wants in the world that he made.
Anyways, you were saying something else. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I even forgot what I was gonna say. It was such a long time ago, behind so much stuff. Just
I mean, there's so much we can know from the evidence that's right in front of us.
Okay, I remember. Yeah, Remy, what you were saying was that you were saying that there can be empirical confirmation of some claims made by the God hypothesis, like in that. So, we have like a biblical flood would be an example of an empirical claim made by the God hypothesis. Now, if we have a scientific explanation and we abduce that the flood didn't exist, that would be disconfirmation of that specific God hypothesis, right?
Yeah, there's a problem with that. Is that the evidence shows that there was a flood.
Yeah, well, naturally, for the geological layers to have happened over what was it, 3 billion years, whatever, ever since the Earth had water on it, for a natural explanation for the layers, it would have to mean that each continent on Earth would either have to be submerged and then the rise out of the water, or there must have been a what was it 40 plus floods that completely covered each individual continent all at once in order for consistency to reign correctly over 3 billion years. So at some point, we don't know how and when, but at some point, it could be tomorrow, it could be in the next 20 years, or according to consistency with the layers, a flood of some sort will make one layer within the next 40, so say 400 million years. So, but to say that we have to wait another 400 million years for another layer to be formed by rain, very slowly, or a single time flood every 400 million years to cause one layer, that's really far fetched. It is.
And it's not. It wouldn't be a consecutive layer because the layers are already deposited. They're already misformed and shaped
Mhm.
and pushed up and pushed down, pushed all over the place. It wouldn't be a consecutive layer. And we already know that 60, 50 billion years would wash all of the layers into the oceans. And so there's no possible way there's millions of years between the layers. It's just absurd.
Mhm.
It looks like Mr. Nihilist and Philip took off. I was going to show you guys something interesting. You guys were talking about the flood and all that. I don't know if you guys are aware of this. I had some atheists not so long ago asking me. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Hello?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. It looked like my screen froze up for a moment. I'm trying to post this link for you to see this. I had some atheists asking me, well, if there was actually a flood, then where did all the water go? And apparently science discovered that 400 miles beneath our feet, we have found oceans so deep and so grand that they could literally fill our oceans 3 times over. Now keep in mind, we live on a water planet, which is 75% water. Why people think that would be difficult to flood when we're already 75% in the water, I don't know. But there you go right there. There's the link.
It's a miracle there's even land existing
Thank you.
that's not underwater.
See, isn't it weird though? They're like, man, that's so strange. How can a man possibly build a boat and float on water? But wait a minute, I got hit by lightning on a rock as a gooey thing, and I came to life that way. That seems to be what they think. It's strange, isn't it? Sorry, I'm getting a little comedic there, ain't I?
I don't know if nihilist is going in and out. I don't know if he's trying to get something working or if he's just leaving. I don't know. But
Remy,
anyways,
I hope that you weren't offended by me getting on it a little bit and everything, but it's already tough enough dealing with people who, in their own definition of their position, don't want to accept reality to talk to them, and then have another guy in the background going, so no offense, brother.
No, I'm just trying to actually get everybody on a civil discussion. That's all. So I try to get both sides engaged at a point that they can bounce off each other properly as an intellectual. So.
I thought I was being quite civil, even when the individual told me that I died.
I wasn't saying you weren't. I wasn't saying you weren't. It's just I wasn't saying you weren't. It's just rather, he wasn't finding the right opportunities or the right words to respond with. So I try to get everybody,
I understand, Remy, and I think I've seen you around on the internet. Me and Jungle, we've been around in these live hangouts. We've been talking to folks, and I mean, a lot of these atheists, they clearly point out that they don't even want there to be a God. They've already said in their mind that they don't want it to be the explanation, and they don't even care enough to find a naturalistic explanation. They simply don't care. For some reason, this is what they enjoy doing on their Friday nights, is just arguing and arguing. They're not really looking for any kind of truth. But I'll keep trying, I will, but I'm not optimistic when it comes to some individuals. You know what I'm talking about, Jungle. You've been around as well.
yeah. I forgot what I was thinking of. I was thinking of something else. Yeah, a lot of people are very hardened against it, and they just want to come. I think this is what I want to say. I think they feel threatened by religion or Christianity in particular. And of course, we know that we're threatened by their bad information that they're, shoving in the schools and pushing everywhere, every which way. But of course, it's understandable because if they do accept the evidence, they have to accept God as being existing and being a maker, and then they have to accept the responsibility before a holy God, which is not something that a secular world wants to do. So, so it's understandable why they would be against Christianity, and it's understandable to a certain extent why they don't want the truth to be known. But they're just afraid of something. The truth can't hurt you. The truth is not going to hurt anyone. And but they think that their rights and their freedoms are going to be jeopardized, and they're not going to be able to do what they want to do. But they probably don't understand that what they want is what changes, so that we want to do what's right. Because there's no excuse for not wanting to do what's right. And yet people still want to do their own thing, wrong or right.
Ridiculously enough, over the years that I've been doing the internet ministry whatsoever, several times I've heard atheists being honest to the core, where they would actually admit, why should I look for a God who is going to send me to hell, as in it's already determined if that God exists, they're going to hell. And I keep trying to address them, but they're not talking to you. But I would like to, anyways, if anybody's watching this, but anyways, and to make a point that if you discover that God of the Bible is right, he's not going to be vindictive, raging, genocidal maniac like a lot of people think he is, even though that's the way only in part that he's depicted. If you do actually accept that Jesus died and bled for your sins, then you're not going to hell. There's nothing in hell that will come against you if you just accept that God exists and he came in the flesh. So
you know what's really weird to me, Jungle and Remy? As both of you know, I used to be a public non-believer. I spent a great deal of time in PMs and discussions, Skype and all that, behind the scenes of the supposed great debate with atheists, often private. And a lot of them were very open to the concept of God. A lot of them stated, yeah, it's possible. But then the very next day, you'd see them make a video saying, F Christians, they're all retards, and yada, yada, yada. So, I mean, what's a person supposed to think when they hear a person in private sitting there saying they're open to God and that there's possibilities, but then the very next day refer to people as illogical retards that are dangerous monsters who are just wanting to destroy the world and all that? Doesn't make any sense. Obviously, there's some kind of agenda.
Either they're actually being honest with you, and they're trying to keep up a popularity afterwards, or they're actually leading you on and being false, one or the other.
Right. So either way, it's going to be a lie coming from them. I can't. When I'm dealing with these individuals, I try to be respectful and civilized, but the truth is, and I say this publicly on videos, my own live rooms, I got no reason to trust these people.
Right.
Yeah, because if they're truly intentionally trying to deceive somebody, that's intent. I mean, if they're doing it on purpose, that's intentional, and that's not a good thing.
It's worse when they actually record everything and then turn it into a gag.
Yeah.
Like Thunderfoot does a lot.
But they have no position. That's the whole thing. They'll be attacking us because they're afraid of what we're teaching, the truth. But they have no truth of their own.
Yeah. Well, on the opposite side, there are many Christians that are answering poorly or don't actually know how to explain, so they give a personal understanding to the answer.
Remy, I think that there are individuals out there that do a great job of scientific explanations and philosophy. I really, really dig John Lennox and a few others out there. I even like Mr. Craig's, some of his arguments, some of them not so much. But The deal is a lot of the guys that are on YouTube and everything who are interacting with the community of the internet atheists, we're regular folks. We're not behind some podium yapping. We're sitting here, we're just enjoying each other's company and doing that. These guys act like they're coming up against Richard Dawkins or something when they come in the room. They act like they're coming up against some kind of whatever. It's just every single day like this. I don't understand it. Why the attraction? Why the appeal? And why do they actually believe it validates their position if they can embarrass or humiliate another human being that they don't even know on the internet?
Yeah, like if Christians are actually, say, the lunatic fringe, then why is an atheist carrying on with that analogy, going to the asylum just to argue with some lunatic who's got his arm bound behind him?
Oh, I agree.
It makes no sense.
That's a good analogy.
Insane, crazy, retarded. I get called every damn name in the book, almost every day on my comments. And I'm saying, if you think that I'm retarded, why don't you advise me on some therapy or some kind of professional help? Don't sit here and keep on mocking me if you actually are convinced I'm retarded. What kind of sick person does that? Makes fun of people who are mentally retarded, you know?
Mind you, a Christian is supposed to look at the atheist as though the boat is not sinking as of yet, but we know that somebody on board has got the means to poke the holes, and we're trying to tell them, get off. So there's a difference. Although a lot of Christians do actually bash and attack and corner atheists on the grounds as if the atheists are the insane ones, and I don't appreciate that either. So.
Well, I got to be honest with you about me. I'm pretty hardcore. I've gotten to a point where I'm dealing with them. I deal with them like a grain of salt. That's how it is. I expect that everything I'm going to hear is going to either be horse crap or it's going to be made up information that isn't even in the science textbooks.
Yep.
And they're going to just do whatever. And I kind of take it that way, but at the same time, I've got this thing in the back of my mind where I want to sow my seed, and that's what I'm going to do. And if I don't get my seed sowed, then at least I tried and move along. Dust my feet.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the thing is that this is very damaging to Christians. I mean, when people start bashing Christians and stuff like that, then people think they have a reason. They think maybe they're justified in attacking Christians because they think they have the truth on their side, but they need to understand that they don't have the truth. And anytime I can talk to somebody who does know somebody, I mean some science or something that I really would like to impress on them, the fact that they are very much in the wrong and that they are doing a very great disservice to society and Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just Christianity they're hurting, though. They're hurting humanity. Christianity is human beings that have been a part of Christianity have done a great deal of contribution for society, science, history, philosophy, every field out there. And what they're doing is just simply, it's another tribalistic club who's saying, look at me, I'm superior, and if you don't agree with me, then I'll just smash you kind of mentality. Mm-hmm. That doesn't help the world. We've already had that a long time now. It's time for something new and fresh.
Right, it's humanity that they're hurting, all of humanity.
Yeah. Like, of course, the atheists that I may actually reason with so that they talk civilly, they could actually be patronizing and just to play, to give a mocking attempt to display civility and behind, and I can see it, quite often you can see it in their intentions and in their direction of the conversation, that they're not being truthful and honest. They're actually trying to ruin the ideal that is proposed to them. So I do try to watch who I reason with. So.
You know, Remy, I'm sure you've noticed, and you've probably heard this 100 times. I know Jungle Jargon myself have, but you hear them try to give analogies or compare God to something like Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny or something like that. And one thing I always ask them that they don't seem to have a good explanation for is, you know, a long time ago I stopped believing in Santa Claus, and not one single time in my entire life have I opened up a live hangout and bitched and complained about Santa Claus for 3 hours. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, there's no comparison.
Trying to obviously trying to fill a gap and attack people because they were cheated out of a childhood security. So they're so they've been cheated out of that security. So obviously they're uh, trying to keep it away from everybody else, cheat everybody else out of it, because they can't have that back. So, and of course that means that it's true that people need Jesus to fill in that security blank spot.
Well, I don't know. I question the the mental capacity or the sincerity of geniuses that teach evolution. I just don't get. I don't see it. I don't see it. I don't know. I mean, how can they be consistent and having everything going against what they're trying to say?
Yeah, like as you reminded me of a good example from when 2 years ago, I think it was. I was watching a video on YouTube of Richard Dawkins when he was younger, and he was on a British uh, education show for kids. So, I don't know whether it was actually his show, but he was guest starring, I'm guessing. And you know, he was trying to disprove the one of the creationist arguments for biology, about the blister beetle, and he brought in the chemical components that they find in these creatures to create the corrosive combustible chemical that they produce in these creatures, and he brought in the synthetic versions of these chemicals and mixed them together in different different potencies. And he missed the point that in order for the evolution of these creatures to happen, one chemical would have to arise before the other, and before they mix together, there would have to be a membrane separating them without destroying the creature itself. Meanwhile, also creating a bladder at the bottom of the bug that is more accurate than your pistol in order to dispense it.
You're not
Yeah,
gonna
it
believe,
doesn't.
Jungle. You're not gonna believe some of these comments I've been getting while we're sitting in here. I got a guy. This is probably the most clever comment I've seen in the entire day. He says, "Brett, you're a wonderful person. I enjoy your videos, and I just want you to know." And he does like 3 periods. He says, "I hope you and your family die in a fire." My goodness, these folks are rational and logical. Makes me want to go out and join the Atheist Club right away.
Yeah, it's threat. They must be a real threat to them. I don't know.
Is that
All we're do-
in the comments for this video or somewhere else?
yeah, I wanted to concentrate on what was being said. I didn't want to look at the comments until afterward. So
Wow.
The comments are my own YouTube channel, the Brett King Superstar. But
Oh.
you would be surprised. Every single day I have my life threatened and everything else. And it's interesting because Kent Hovind, I don't know if you guys watch him, but he describes us as being like salt, that we should season. You know, we should add flavor to the environment around us and with the people we are. But unfortunately, salt can sometimes irritate. And apparently I irritate.
Yep.
I'll be right back, guys.
All right.
Yes,
I gotta
all
turn
we're
it.
doing. Yeah, okay.
No, I'm not
All
gonna
we're,
turn it right now. But finish what you were gonna say.
yeah, all we're doing is telling the truth, and there's no good reason not to want to tell the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't, they haven't come up with any real evidence or reason to believe that we're not telling the truth. I mean, the truth is what sets us free. And I was thinking the other night that when talking about free will, people talk about free will as either you have free will or you don't, or either you're a robot or you're not. But I was looking at it like the fact that the more you can't focus on what's true and what's real, the more that you will be led into doing what's right. That that you will be. I mean, that would be sanctification if you're listening, if you're following leading the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of truth. But and the converse is true. The more you listen to lies, the more you think it's all a big joke. The less you're going to, less chance or less possibility there is of you knowing, coming to God, or being one of the elect. It's not. I mean, it's foreknown. Everything is foreknown, but that doesn't mean that people don't have a chance. People can choose to be led by the truth, or they can choose to, be, led by lies, fall into sin, be deceived by sin, and to be continually getting worse and worse.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like people don't have a chance, which is what the fear seems to be. Because God is able to make all grace abound towards us, having all sufficiency in all things may abound to every good work, or something like that. He's able to work in us to will and to do of His good pleasure. And that's all by the leading of the Holy Spirit and following the truth. It's exactly what the Bible says, that salvation is through sanctification by the Spirit, faith in the truth. And all sins have to be covered for, because sinners can't cover for any part of their sin. And all sin has to be accounted for.
Just trying to find a link to your to the video for this, because people can watch what we're saying. I'm just trying to figure out where to find it.
Yeah, I'm gonna look after we shut it down. I'm gonna look for the link. I don't know if it's on YouTube yet, or if I don't know. I have to look around and post things around. If I
No,
can't figure that out.
all live G pluses are immediately accessible. Well, no, actually, no. When you create the room, you have to actually specify whether it's public or not. So,
Yeah, this I think it's public. Yeah, I kind of forget if it was public, but I usually make it public,
but
or try to make it
if
public.
it's public, then YouTube will allow access to it while it's live, so people can watch it as it's happening.
Yeah, maybe I didn't do that.
I don't know. Maybe I just can't remember how to find it.
And another thing is that sometimes it gets posted without any picture.
Hmm.
I I can't figure out how to make it have a picture or whatever. Sometimes, or if it just takes time or what, I don't know.
No, it'll publish automatically when you're finished here, when you go offline.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I've seen it happen when I was watching things online. It just goes live. I mean, just goes public started.
I'm just looking at your videos on your YouTube page right now, and I'm not seeing anything about the live chat right now. So.
Well, there was one where it has live streaming. Does it show a live streaming?
No.
I gotta. If not, you have to go to videos or something like that. You have
Yeah,
to go.
already there, and the last one was a week ago.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
All right.
I'm back, guys. I was wondering, Jungle, did you ever have a chance to let me take a look over here. See the video that I put together called if this will load up. God versus Science, 6,000-year-old flat Earth expanding universe. Of course, you know I'm not into the flat Earth thing, but I showed off some different Bible verses that actually show that it speaks of the expanding universe and celestial body, and also spoke about how the Bible actually knew that the Earth was out in space and that nothing held it up. Did you see this?
It hangs on nothing yet. No, I didn't see it yet, but there's one way you can interpret the circle of the Earth. It could be referring to the cycles, which would be the seasons, which would be the circle it makes around the sun.
Oh,
Yeah,
I pointed out all kinds of different passages in it, but whenever you get time, man, whenever you're not busy, check it out, man. It's pretty.
yeah,
I went to the whole CGI of special effects of the universe and everything, and talked about the Bible verses and how they match up with science and everything. And a lot of people are going, "Wow, that's neat." It's pretty crazy that a book written thousands and thousands of years before secular science knew all this.
yeah. There's a lot of things.
All right. Well, I'm gonna have to say goodnight, guys. It's 1:30, and I got an
All
early
right,
morning. So.
All right, good
yeah.
night, bang.
All right, take it easy. I guess we're pretty much talked out already.
Yeah, my wife, she's about ready to go to bed and everything, keep me warm and cozy. And as much as I like to hang out with all you human beings, there's just nothing that can, you know, go to the epitome of the awesomeness of sleeping with the wife. You know what I mean?
All right, I guess I'll just shut down now. Thanks for everybody who participated, and have a nice night.